Kevin's in Oxford. Kevin, is Shamima Begum British?
No, she doesn't deserve to come back here. I'm sorry. As far as I'm concerned, she was British, but they took away her passport. I don't want to live in near my family. I've raised 6 children. I can categorically tell you that all of them at 15 would know not to join a terrorist organisation that beheads people, burns people alive and throws gays off a building.
What if they were groomed?
I'm sorry, I couldn't be groomed. Do you know her birthday? Do you know she was nearer 16 than 15? Or do you know her birthday? Have you done enough research to know her birthday?
I don't know her birthday. I don't
Okay,
think that's necessarily the most relevant thing.
I'll do the job for you, Ollie. It's relevant. She was nearer 16 than 15. She was born in August.
How old was she at the time?
Do you know when she went to Syria? Do you know what day she went to Syria?
She was 15, wasn't she, at the time, Kevin?
Do you know what date she went to Syria?
I don't think your debating tactic of picking specific dates and random facts.
You're a journalist. She went in February, the end of February, so she was nearer 16.
Right, now, okay. How does that change anything? How does the fact that she was a slightly older 15-year-old change the fact that she was groomed?
Because I can tell you categorically, Ollie, that at 15, nearly 16, you know the difference not to join a terrorist group. You may slip down the park and have a cider and a cigarette, Ollie.
Okay.
Did you at 15, could you be groomed at 15, Ollie? Probably you. You wouldn't surprise me if you could be groomed at 15.
What do you mean by that?
Ollie, you're talking...
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that, mate?
You talk trash, Ollie.
I sound like someone who could be the victim of abuse.
Well, I
don't think that's the getcha you think it is.
You're so naive, Ollie.
I'm so naive that I could be abused.
I think you could be probably groomed. Let me tell you something.
Right.
Do you think the people of Manchester that were bombed, those innocent, lovely people that were bombed in Manchester, do you think they want her living down the bottom of their garden? I wouldn't think so, Ollie. But you're so naive.
What does she have to do with that, Kevin? What does she have to do with the Manchester bombing?
It's the same. It's a terrorist organisation that bombed people that believe in killing people. You know, the infidels.
And if we caught the Manchester bomber, would you like to see him face the full force of the law?
Of course, yes. I want him out of the country as well.
No,
I don't want them here. We don't. We don't want them here. We don't want them here.
Who's them? Who's them, Kevin?
All these terrorists. We don't want them.
You nearly said it, didn't you? You nearly said it. No,
Ollie. No.
You came close.
No, Ollie. Don't try and...
Should we deport the person who killed Joe Cox?
Be a journalist.
Should Thomas Mayer be deported?
Be a journalist, Ollie. Do your homework, okay? Do a poll.
Kevin,
and see if
should Joe Cox's killer be deported?
Joe Cox's killer? Well, personally, I'd hang them. He should be hung.
Right, okay. I think we're getting a flavour of your views on criminal justice here.
Well, there you go. If you're a bit woke and naive, so you wouldn't understand anyway.
It's woke to believe. It's woke to believe. It's woke to believe that 15-year-olds who are groomed are not fully responsible for the things that they do. Is that woke?
15, you don't think you know the difference between right and wrong at 15? What kind of planet are you on, Ollie? Do you walk around in your little social bubble in Chelsea, sipping your champagne, talking nonsense like this with your chums?
No, I don't. I don't go to Chelsea very much.
I'm sure you don't. You're
I don't go to Chelsea very much.
You don't even know when she was born, Ollie, and you're doing the topic conversation.
Kevin, your obsession with these specific random details in order to... They don't have any bearing on the moral argument, right? Which is that at 15, you are a child... And as a result of which, if you are groomed, you are not fully responsible for the things that you do as a result.
When do you stop being a child then, Ollie? When do you stop being a child? Can you lighten me on that with your fantastic knowledge of journalism? When do you stop being a child?
In the eyes of the law at 18.
At 18? Oh, I see, okay. Oh, okay. So we can
Well, I don't understand what you're getting at here, mate.
Because it's nonsense. At 15, you know not to join the terrorist group.
You are still a child. You are still a child.
Yeah, okay, Ollie. You believe that, Ollie.
So you don't think a 15-year-old is a child?
I don't think a 15-year-old would join a terrorist organisation unless there's something radically wrong with their brain.
Should a 15-year-old be able to go to war?
Yes.
So you support child soldiers? That's what we've come to.
Well, let me tell you something. Do you know in the Second World War, Ollie, how many child soldiers we had in the Second World War?
Is that a good thing?
Did I say it was a good thing?
Well, yeah, you just did. You just said you support the use of...
No, I didn't say it was a good thing. No, come on. I said yes. I didn't say it was a good thing.
I asked you if you support child soldiers. You said yes.
In certain circumstances, if you have to protect your family and loved ones, I think yes. But you wouldn't, Ollie, because you're too woke. I couldn't see you with a rifle, young man. I could see you just being in the background talking nonsense.
Your inability to engage with the substance of this argument and just come on and relentlessly call me woke. What do you mean there's no substance? We're talking about rendering a British person stateless. There is clear ethical, moral questions to be answered. And for you to just come on and say she was slightly older than 15 and you're woke is not good enough.
Ollie, do you have children? Do you have children, Ollie?
No, I don't have children, Kevin.
Okay, but when you do, God forbid that your 15-year-old knows the difference between right and wrong, whether to join a terrorist organisation. God forbid. Let's hope they do. Let's hope you've read them well enough, Ollie. They know the difference between beheading people and throwing gays off of buildings and burning people alive in cages. Yep. Let's hope you do a better job at parenting than you do at journalism, Ollie. Anyway, have a good day, mate. Bye-bye.
Oh, he's gone. Love to the family, Kevin. Edward's in Brighton. Edward, should Boris Johnson return to politics?
Yeah, I like Boris Johnson. I think he's a very much maligned character.
Okay.
Johnson.
Why do you think he should come back?
Why? Because the country needs a Boris Johnson. We need to lighten up. The politics has got so boring since Johnson resigned, and I think he was treated very unfairly, Johnson.
So what should we lighten up about? Should we lighten up about things like truth and objective facts? To your point about, politics isn't a laugh anymore. I mean, should it be a laugh? Should it?
No, I didn't say it should be a laugh at all. I said what we need is somebody of Johnson's quality leading the country.
Okay, so what are his qualities?
I think Johnson was a very, very good leader. But the media was after Johnson from the moment he became Prime Minister.
Edward, in what respect do you think Johnson was a good Prime Minister? Give me the pro column. Make his case.
Look how he handled the pandemic. Look how he handled the Ukraine business.
Do we think he handled the pandemic well?
Well, again, I think Johnson didn't want a lockdown, but the pressure was brought to bear by all these useless experts. I think there was the problem.
We've had enough of experts. We're of that ilk. Okay. So when you look at more than 200,000 excess deaths, when you look at the economic data and sort of the UK's recovery in terms of GDP, if you put the UK into a list of other countries and how they performed in response to COVID, we sort of come out around about in the middle. Not brilliant, not terrible. We're not sort of on Brazil levels of incompetence, but equally, certain other countries that handle things differently, we're not up there either. So it's kind of middle of the road. I'm interested in what it is, what aspect of the pandemic is it nurses in bin bags instead of PPE? Is that good handling of the pandemic, or are you sort of getting it more?
Hang on a moment. Let's just look at Hunt for a start off, because Hunt was the health secretary in 2016, 2017 when they had an inventory.
Yeah.
And it was said then that if this country faced a pandemic, we will be woefully short of equipment.
Operation Cygnus.
Theresa May and Mr. Hunt did nothing about it.
Yeah.
And we got a pandemic and we got absolutely hammered.
Yeah. I mean, Boris Johnson was the Prime Minister at the time, though, wasn't he? He was responsible for dictating.
No, Johnson wasn't Prime Minister at the time.
No, during the pandemic. During the pandemic. Sorry.
Yeah,
he was the Prime Minister during the pandemic when he was able to act.
That's right. But remember, he's not a scientist and he's not a doctor. He had to follow what the experts were telling him.
Patrick Vallance and Chris Whitty.
Experts were contradicting each other all the time.
Well, I think that's the thing about science, isn't it? It's not necessarily always completely conclusive, and the ministers would interpret are responsible for interpreting their science.
200,000 people died. Where did you get that figure from?
It's the excess deaths figure.
The 200,000 people didn't die of COVID.
No, that's why I didn't say that 200,000 people died of COVID.
Had
I said
other
there were 200,000 excess deaths.
They had other complications, and just COVID tipped them over the edge.
Well, I mean, in the example you've just given there, that would still be being killed by COVID, wouldn't it?
No.
Well, yes.
It was an. I'm getting lost here.
I'll just say on that, Edward. We'll bring it back to Boris, but I would just say on that, if I've got diabetes and then I get hit by a bus crossing the road, the bus kills me. It's not the diabetes.
Well, yeah, you've got a point there.
Yeah.
But this Partygate business.
Okay, yeah. Tell me about that. So how do you feel about that then? Because obviously that was kind of the thing that brought him down.
I think he was much maligned over it.
Unfairly maligned.
He didn't. I don't think he did anything wrong.
Really?
I can't see what he did wrong. Absolutely. If you're going to commit a crime, would you have somebody in the same room with a camera taking photographs?
Well, I think that's the point, isn't it? He probably didn't necessarily. Wasn't aware that he was committing a crime.
He was completely innocent. He got sidetracked. He walked into this room. Somebody stuck a drink in his hand, and he toasted their goodwill. They were retiring or something.
Yeah.
And he had a piece of cake in his hand. This was all blown out of proportion by the media.
Ignorance.
They were after Johnson.
Ignorance isn't a justification for innocence.
He wasn't being ignorant. He was just being
That's
Boris
the argument.
Johnson. He was just being.
Are they not? Are they not the same thing?
And let's get other thing straight about him being a liar. Who's the biggest liar? Would you say, Tony Blair or Boris Johnson?
Oh, now you're speaking my language, Edward. Because I think there's a very valid argument that the system of government under Tony Blair, and most crucially under Alistair Campbell, sets in motion and sets in trend the lack of honesty, the lack of accountability in British politics. I think it goes back to them. And the fact that Alistair Campbell is now viewed as like a mental health campaigner, essentially, when he basically spun Britain into an illegal war, I think is reprehensible.
I think that's when his depression started. I think he realises that he's got blood on his hands, the same as Blair. But but Blair was not maligned the same as what Johnson is.
Edward? I think I beg to differ. I think Tony Blair is one of the most toxic figures in British politics. I think most people, whenever I talk to people out and about and Blair comes up, very few people have a good word to say about him. It's only kind of, I would say people sort of, more middle-aged liberal people who kind of, look fondly on any Labour Prime Minister. Young people don't like him because of the war in Iraq. I'm always hesitant, by the way, to talk about, demographics, thinking one certain thing, to say, young people think X or old people think Y. But I genuinely think Tony Blair is one of the more toxic politicians in Britain.
But Johnson could have been a great Prime Minister.
But he wasn't.
He really could have done. But he was surrounded. He surrounded himself with sycophants. That was his problem. He surrounded himself with all his pals.
And that's
not a way to run a government.
He surrounded himself with sycophants. What does that tell you about the man? Would that tell you that he was a narcissist?
Well, look at Gavin Williamson. He was a useless defence secretary. He was absolutely garbage as an education secretary, and the damn guy got a knighthood.
Because Johnson was so weak that he was only able to appoint people to his cabinet who were blindly loyal to him. He couldn't handle anyone with independent thought. He couldn't handle anyone who did anything other than blindly, unquestioningly.
Look at Priti Patel. Look at that Priti Patel. She was as much used as a woodpecker with a rubber beak, wasn't she?
That's a good one. I haven't heard that before.
She was, wasn't she?
Yeah. This is Edward. I can't make sense of whether or not you're in favour of Boris Johnson or against him. I really can't.
Okay. There's no.
Not entirely sure what that means. I haven't heard that one before. Edward, thank you for your call. Nice to talk to you. I didn't think we'd get someone making the case for Boris Johnson, but they are out there. Clearly, I'm surprised. Those people, they're about. John's a first-time caller in Croydon. John, what's on your mind?
Yes, I'm quite disgusted about the actual whole situation.
Disgusted?
To be honest, yeah, well, it's down to choice, really, isn't it?
Okay.
People are still dwelling on the actual past. We are actually all living together. We are sleeping together. We are literally drinking together. Where my stepdaughter herself is a mixed race child, and this information and stuff, everything is being put towards her. What are we actually teaching our new generation to be still dwelling on the past? I honestly, I'm quite sick of it, because I believe.
What are you sick of, John? History?
Well, no, I'm sick of what happened in history, most definitely. But we're all together. We're all a community. We all need to process, get along with each other, and move on straight. We are all better than this.
I think, John, what we're trying to do with this is we're encouraging people to see the world and reality as it is now. That's what we're encouraging them to do. That's what this play is about, right? This play is about police violence and racism
definitely.
now.
Most definitely, and this is what my point. Where I'm trying to put it, I'm totally disgusted with it in that prospect.
Sorry, what are you? You're disgusted by racism, or you're disgusted by these blackout nights?
Definitely with racism itself. You know what I mean? In general.
Right. Okay.
And secluding people in the sense of saying, oh, we're just enticing more people to come in that cultural race, is to entice everyone to come. We're all the same. Colour. If people are still seeing colour, then people are still they're stupid people. They're dumb people. They should even.
Oh wow. Okay. Sorry. Just to be clear, John. People that still sort of think that race is relevant, they're dumb. Is that?
Well, in the sense that we're all still together. It doesn't matter. People think because of skin colour we're all different. We're not different. We're all the same.
John, I really don't understand how you can call me up, say you're disgusted by racism, and then tell me that people that think that race is relevant are dumb. When you're 9 times more likely to be arrested as a black person than a white person. I mean, what are we talking about here? I don't. What do you mean?
What do I personally mean?
Yes. What do you mean?
Well, people are still seeing colour as a general, big, highly horrible matter. It's disgusting the way people think nowadays of this, by excluding people just because of the colour of their skin.
Right. Sorry. So when you said that you thought racism was disgusting, you didn't mean racism itself. You meant people who care about racism.
No, that's not, because I care about racism. I care about every single human being in the entire world.
But you just said people who think
it's dumb in the sense of people are still dwelling on this. We need to move on. We're all humans. We need to move on from this.
We need to move on from racism.
No, we need to move on from this prospect of this colour situation.
I really don't follow you, John. I'm going to need you to tell me a little bit more about what you mean.
Me personally, people still dwell on the black, white, brown stuff, everything. To be honest with you, it's way too much nowadays. It is generally way too much. It's actually it stresses me out even thinking about it. My poor daughter has to live in a society where people are excluding each other in that prospect of the colour of their skin. I mean, it's disgusting.
And so if people are being excluded from things because of the colour of their skin, that affects your daughter, right?
It affects every person, not just the white man, the black man, or absolutely anyone. It affects everyone, because we are all together.
But you think we shouldn't dwell on it?
So I do think we should be aware of what happened in the past, but taking things way too far and out of proportion is absolutely disgusting. This is the point what I'm trying to make.
So is your point the way to deal with racism is to stick our heads in the sand and put our fingers in our ears?
No, most definitely.
You just said we need to move on. You said we need to move on.
Most definitely we need to move on. We need to. We're all grown adults. We're not all children. We're not playing in the school ground, are we? We're not picking humanity to grow up.
Right, okay. John, Jason's text in. Does John mean there's too much racism or people talk too much? about racism?
No, there's too much racism in general. For instance, the previous lady was speaking onto the actual phone, saying that she didn't feel safe sitting next to a white person, and she wanted to have more cultural nights of black people being around her and stuff, so she could feel more safe. I mean, I'm pretty sure that sounds a bit racist to me. You know, it doesn't matter who we sit next to or anything, or who we feel like because of the colour of their skin. I mean, that's back to the racism and stuff, isn't it?
If someone wants to make themselves emotionally vulnerable, right, fully engaging with trauma, history and such, and one of the ways in which they feel they can make themselves fully emotionally vulnerable is to be with people who have common experience, who've shared those things as well. You know, it's similar to, I don't know, let's say having support groups for alcoholics, right? Or you know, rape survivors, where they would perhaps feel more comfortable talking about their things to people who have also experienced the horrible thing that they've experienced.
Because either way, us white people ourselves are still traumatized with what happened in the past with the slavery and things like that.
Yeah, no, of course.
Absolutely.
You can still empathise, but it doesn't affect you as directly, does it, John?
It's just the thought of like knowing of that. It makes me feel bad in that general. Even though the past was the past, I know what happened then, and all we're trying to do now is move on and basically live life together as happy and as peacefully as possible. It's still mind blowing. My head just still can't get around it. That in this century, it's like this audacity of this is still carrying on. It's outrageous. It generally is. I'm just appalled that it's still happening still today, like in that general.
You're appalled that racism's still happening today?
Yeah, most definitely. It's sickening.
John,
it's totally sickening.
Do you mind me asking if it's happened to your stepdaughter? Has she experienced racism?
Yes. Well, she has, yes. And I've also walked down the street, and because I've been with her, I've been secluded too, because I'm being a white man walking with a mixed race child. I've been literally, because I'm a white man walking down the road with a mixed race child. It's happened to me too, in that type of sense. And like, but it frustrates me. See, it really, truly does. Yeah, it really, really generally does.
You said you'd been excluded from somewhere, John. Where was that?
Well, I was casually walking through the park with my actual daughter, and when there's two gentlemen standing there, and they currently refuse to get out of the way, and one of the other guy pulled her to the side. Hold on, the little girl's one of us. So I was like, excuse me, is there any need for that?
What do you mean?
Because the two gentlemen were black as it is, and because I was walking down the road with my daughter, which was mixed race, they was like, well, one of the other guy turned around and said basically, move out of the way. The girl's one of us. I mean, I thought, is there any need for that? I mean, how outrageous is that? That's just disgusting.
Sorry, so that they were saying that because you're white,
and I was walking down.
You had to move out the way of them.
Yeah, basically.
Right.
Because I was with my mixed race stepdaughter, you know, they said, hold on, she's one of us. Let her through. And I was like, excuse me.
Right.
I thought, how? I mean, come on. I was like, come on, guys. Is there any need for this nowadays?
Okay. So sorry. So when I asked you about your stepdaughter's experience of racism, you're talking about you being racially abused. She's never been discriminated against, has she?
To me personally, in school and stuff, I know there's been a few cases previously before where it'd be another subject, or not just that, of other types of abuse, but that's another story for another subject for another day. But I pray to God that it never happens. But the society we live in today is so unreal and unpredictable. I'm just scared for her, really, personally.
Okay. And so when someone takes action to try and address these racial imbalances, you support that?
100%. 100%.
So you support these blackout nights at the theatre?
Yeah, I do support that everyone should unite together and basically do it. Yes, 100%, yes. And I think everyone should feel safe around each other and not just discriminate just being around that. I know some people do feel comfortable in that type of subject, but, you know, like we all need to, like, take this chip off the shoulder, and we all need to, like, stand each other up, support each other and move forward.
John, thank you for your call. James is in East Grinstead. James, should we ban protest outside Parliament? Good morning.
Good morning, Oli, and thank you for taking my call. Before I answer your question, and it's a very tough question as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to phone up regarding your call, Peter.
Okay.
And I do understand his frustration, and I think it's an age thing as well. I'm probably the same age as Peter. I'm 72, and I wouldn't call myself a racist. I hope I'm not a racist, but I think people of my age do suffer from Islamophobia.
Okay, go on.
And the reason being is we're scared, frightened. I've seen great changes in this country, and I do feel that there's a slow erosion of our democracy. And the reason why I say that is, if you remember, I think it was nearly 3 years ago at Batley School, a poor young teacher dared show a cartoon of Muhammad, and let's face it, Muhammad is a caricature. He had 10 wives. The youngest is 6, so I don't need to tell you what that makes Muhammad.
James,
hang on, no, let me finish.
No, you're saying a lot, and I do have to come back. To describe the founder of a religion as a caricature,
yep.
you know what you're doing when you do that. You know what you're doing.
Tell me.
It's needlessly offensive. To describe Jesus Christ as a caricature.
Yes, it is offensive, but we live in a democracy. I have a right to offend, and they have the right to be offended.
To a limit,
because we live in a democracy.
To a limit.
What I'm saying is that teacher is still in hiding because he dared show a cartoon. Okay. Secondly, a young boy took the Quran into school 18 months ago. As of there, he dropped it. His mother had to go to a mosque and apologise. My question is, why? And thirdly, 3 weeks ago, 3 female terrorists were found guilty of terrorism. A Muslim judge let them off. Now, here's the caveat. I want to end on this, and I'm trying to be as eloquent as possible, even though I'm extremely angry. Islam is a 6th century religion. It's remained in the 6th century. It has no place in the 21st century, and it has no place in Great Britain.
You think there is no place for Islam in Great Britain?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Why?
There's 4 million Muslims in this country. It is estimated that in 40 years there will be 13 million Muslims in this country. If
why is that a problem?
Because when you've got 13 million Muslims in this country and will probably demand that they have the right to be called to prayer 5 times a day, who's going to stop them?
James, I don't understand what your problem with 4 million people practising their faith is.
I'm not.
We have freedom of religion in this country.
I've got 13 million people in this country.
We don't. That's an estimation, isn't it? Let's deal with the facts.
Yes,
let's deal with the here and now.
Yes, yeah, okay. But you tell me then, why is that teacher still in hiding? Because he dared show a cartoon of Muhammad. Why?
Well,
why did 3 terrorist women who were found guilty of terrorism, which is the most heinous act in this country, were let off by a Muslim judge? Why can't you see it? And I have to say, Oli, and I thank you for taking my call.
Yeah.
I do find LBC extremely left-wing, and people like me get closed down frequently because you are so left-wing and you can't see it.
Well, I'm not necessarily sure whether the station is left-wing. We have a balance of opinion and presenters, and James, you're getting
totally
okay.
Disagree.
Well,
I disagree.
That's probably your Overton window impacting that. But I'm giving you the time, and we are having this discussion. So you are getting the space.
Okay, I appreciate that.
My position on this, I think, is is quite simple, James, and it's that you cannot extrapolate from those isolated incidences that, as a result of some issues, right? You know, the fact that David Amos, the MP, right, was killed by an Islamist terrorist. You know, the last MP to be murdered, Joe Cox, was killed by a middle-aged white man. I do not go around saying that I think, as a result, all middle-aged white men should be kicked out of the country or that they pose an existential threat to Britain. It is wrong to draw a conclusion about an entire group of people based on the actions of individuals. And I think it is revealing that we only do that with ethnic minorities or people of different faiths. We're reluctant to engage with the fact, for example, that the majority of paedophiles in this country are white men.
Well, okay, hang on. You've got researchers. I don't know. I would tend to disagree with you, because what about what happened in Rochdale or all over the northeast of England, when instead of having hundreds of young children groomed and raped, it was thousands. And why was it thousands? Because the police were aware of this, but had no backbone whatsoever because of the word racism, and it is still going on. So once again, I disagree with you what you've just said.
Well, James, it's a statement of fact. To say this, you know, I'm looking at the data now, and I'll share it with you for the purposes of transparency. 2020 report by the Centre of Expertise on Child Sexual Abuse stated that, quote, in the records of defendants prosecuted for child sexual abuse offences, among those in which ethnic background was recorded, the vast majority were white, 89%, 6% were Asian, 3% were black, 1% were from mixed ethnic backgrounds. And I find it revealing, actually, for you when I raise the prospect, when I raise that fact with you, rather than engaging with it, you direct the conversation away to something which is relevant, but again to say, oh well, also there's this instance where some Muslims have committed sexual abuse. It doesn't stand up. You need to engage with this holistically. You can't just point to constantly the things that Muslims have done and then form conclusions about an entire group of people based on those individuals. It's immoral, it's wrong, it's Islamophobic, and in some cases racist. George is in Leeds. George, good morning. Should we ban protest outside Parliament?
No, what I don't understand is who asked the British people if they wanted all these Muslims in the country and asylum seekers. Only one man I remember ever said what was going to happen. That was Enoch Powell.
Right, okay. You're referencing the Rivers of Blood speech, which many people view...
No. When you say, this is what upsets me, the Rivers of Blood speech, it was who blew... the bombings in Manchester, the bombings in London, the bombings in Madrid, the bombings in Paris, the Twin Towers, Lockerbie, the policeman shot in Croydon. They were all Muslims. Was there one Sikh, one Buddhist? Was any of them any other religion except Muslims? When a mullah in a mosque could convince a teenager to put £25 of dynamite round himself and blow himself up in Manchester, London, they tried it in Liverpool, Paris, Madrid, the Twin Towers in America. Do you really think Hamas is going to take any notice of what the politicians say?
Right, George. So, George, in response to the points that you're making, I mean, I would note that I asked you a question about banning protest outside Parliament, and you haven't had a word to say about that just yet. In relation to your initial point about whether anyone asked if we wanted 4 million British Muslim immigrants to this country, about half of the Muslims in this country were born here, so they're not immigrants. In relation to the people that come here via immigration, we obviously don't have a referendum on immigration policy. We have elections where people put forward their positions on immigration, and people can vote for them in that way. But to your point,
only one person told us what would happen. Tony Benn as well, by the way. As he said, that a complete alien culture has been dumped on this country.
See, the thing is, George,
the British people.
The thing is, George, I don't view British culture as so weak that it cannot handle people from different backgrounds, different beliefs joining this society? Well, okay, but you're gonna have to offer some evidence for that. That this idea that because certain people do horrible things, commit terrorist acts, does not mean you discriminate against the entire group of people. It is farcical to suggest that because some people are Islamist extremists, that all Muslims are a threat to us. They are not. You don't go around. This reminds me of the sort of the racism of the 70s, 80s and 90s. You don't go around blocking Irish people from coming into your pubs because of the bombing campaign of the IRA. You don't go around accusing all British men of being paedophiles when the majority of paedophiles in this country are white British men. You don't do that because it doesn't make any sense to draw that conclusion.
Good God. Are you denying the fact that Muslims blew up Manchester, London, Lockerbie, Twin Towers, Paris, Madrid? Are you saying it never happened?
Nope, that's not what I'm saying at all.
What? It's a fact. It happened.
It did happen, and the people that did it were extremists.
No,
they weren't extreme.
They were all Muslims.
They were Islamist extremists. They were Muslims, yes. Although I think, by the way, George, there is an argument to say that actually their interpretation of Islam is not one that the 99% of the 1 billion Muslims in the world would recognise. They would tell you that is in no way representative of their faith, but of their faith. But I would, just for the rhetorical purposes of this argument and to stop you from blowing a gasket, I'm not going to make that argument to you right now.
Good God, I can't believe what I'm listening.
What can't you believe?
I've worked in the 11 Arabic countries. In every Arabic country I've been in, where Israel is, on every map, it's been blacked out. On every map.
Hateful. It's hateful, that sort of thing, isn't it?
Do you not understand? I don't understand.
Okay, I don't know. George, let me put it to you like this.
Warned us, and you've exactly said Enoch Powell was vilified all his life, and long after his death, 3 rivers of blood speech.
Yeah.
And there have been rivers of blood.
Do you think, George, do you think that the black man has the whip hand over the white man?
Well, it looks like it now, doesn't it?
Well, there we go then. Well, there we go. So that's the problem, isn't it, with speech like that? That's the problem with speech like that, because it gives people like you deluded ideas about the state of society. You genuinely think black people in Britain have more power than white people. Is that your belief?
Well, looks like it, doesn't it?
What's your basis for saying that? It doesn't look like that, by the way.
The bloke across from me, he took his company to court, and I said to him, he asked me to write a letter complaining about he was injured at work. I said, what does
this have to do with anything, George? What does this have to do with anything?
He's passing word to me, I said, you're never going to win. He said, well, I'll pay the race card. I said, Victor,
right, okay,
you was white last week. You was like last week. Now you're half caste. You're going to pay the race card. I just said to him, get out my house. I don't want you anywhere near me.
Right, okay. Well, I think that's unfortunate. I also probably wouldn't use the phrase that you used there, half caste. I find that language quite unsavoury. I'd probably use the phrase mixed race.
He was half chat.
Right, okay.
He was half caste.
George, just finally, and we can sort of draw a line under the bigotry of this phone call, 350 mass shootings in America last year, vast majority of those being committed either by Christians or non-religious people.
How many what?
350 mass shootings in America. Should we go after Christians as a result? Do you think Christians are a threat to the people of America?
We don't understand what you're talking about.
I do understand what I'm talking about. I'm imposing the exact same logic on you that you are bringing to this phone call. Do you think that the majority Christian perpetrators of the mass shootings in America are a signifier, are emblematic of a Christian rot at the heart of American society?
Maybe different. They shot somebody.
What's different?
But
What's different?
These people, these Muslims, are tying dynamite around themselves and blowing themselves up.
Is the difference, George?
You can't deny it. Are you telling me
is
it
the
never
difference,
happened?
George, is the difference that the Christians are white and the Muslims are brown? Is that the difference?
Look, has any Christian blown himself up, tied a bomb around himself and killed 40, 50 people or 1,000?
So I don't understand. Is your problem just specifically with suicide bombing, or is it because that's not something you've really expressed before?
Wait, let me tell you this. When the wars on which I lived through, the Germans were up in the air dropping bombs at us, and we knew what was happening. We knew where the enemy was. Now we've got them in this bloody country, for God's sake. The ones who blew up Manchester, they was living in this country, so-called British, for God's sake.
Okay.
Don't you understand?
I do understand, George. I think I understand your bigotry very, very well. I think I understand it very well. For anyone listening, I do apologise for his language. Obviously, I only repeated it quoting him, but I wouldn't use that terminology to describe a mixed race person. I don't condone the use of that language, neither does LBC. George, thank you for your call. Roger's in Manchester. Roger, good morning. Should Shamima Begum be granted her British citizenship? Is she our responsibility?
No, she shouldn't, by virtue of the fact that she's been out of the... Good to speak to you, by the way. By virtue of the fact she's been out of the country for such a long period of time. She's indicated her alliance to a different country, although she doesn't indicate she wants to become a citizen of that country. And the fact that she's involved in a terrorist group, we don't know if she was given citizenship, if she did come back to this country, whether she would engage in terrorist activities, be it just something minor, spying or whatever. I think the government made a statement.
Roger, what country is it that she's pledged allegiance to?
I've just been looking for the article on the... I've only just become aware of the story, actually, from your producer. I have been looking for an article, read about it on the internet. I haven't managed to find one.
Okay.
But which country has she been based in for the last 9 years?
Syria.
There you go. So, why do you think she should be given... What do you think that the pros are, the reasons why she should be given citizenship?
I don't think there are many pros. I don't think there are many pros at all. But I think that's the nature of decisions like this, that you don't get to sort of opt out of being someone's state. That whilst, you may be right, I think there are probably almost certainly some very serious security issues to address with her. She would need to be interrogated on her return. But I don't think, and maybe this is where we differ, I don't think, potentially, and we don't know this for a fact, but, potentially having committed terrorist acts, at the very least, being associated with a terrorist group, going out to Syria to join them and to marry a fighter.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean you're not British. And I know that's a difficult thing.
Well, yes, that's true. But it's like it's by association. It's like if somebody associates with criminals, they might not be engaged in criminal activity, but they associate with, they're involved with them. And in terms of the law, association is to take consideration in terms of what someone's involvement and which indicates a possible potential involvement in criminal activity. And if
you did criminal activity, I would expect you to face the force of the law.
Of course.
And if you're a terrorist, again, I would expect you to face the force of the law. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. The problem for me is that we've rendered her stateless, that we've revoked her British citizenship. I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think, regardless of what someone has done. I mean, even, in times of war, if someone is spying for the enemy, I still don't think you render them stateless. Do you know what I mean? I think you put them through the criminal justice system. You put them through, maybe you put them through the security system. Do you see what I'm saying?
They have evidence. That's the evidence. I mean, for example, if she was to be a spy over here for them, gathering evidence is easier said than done. She'd have to be spied upon by our own secret services, terrorism is something that's very difficult. I mean, I didn't like the fact that a long time ago, was it 15, 20 years ago, you didn't need to show your passport to travel Europe when we were part of the EU. I thought, well, hang on, that allows people to just come over here to Britain and reverse versa without proving who they are. So it could be anyone, terrorists could come in without, there not being so system, no way of tracking them. I didn't like that open door policy, of free travel without having to show your passport. You remember that, don't you?
But this is the thing, though. I'm not saying that she should be able to, open door, come back to Britain and return to normal life. I'm saying that she should come back to Britain and answer for potentially, again, we don't know, but certainly it seems likely, that she's almost certainly, done something wrong by going out there. But she should face trial. We should establish that via, the established means, the way that we do for everyone else who's British.
Well, then, do we know what activity she might have been involved in?
Well, I assume it would be terrorism charges you'd be investigating, wouldn't it, in relation to going out there?
She's been in the country for 9 years, out of the country, then we don't know what she's been up to in that country.
Exactly.
So, again, a case couldn't be formed, so there's sufficient evidence for her to be prosecuted.
Well, and this is it. This is it, actually, because there'll be others, right? I think the most up-to-date figures I could find when I was looking into this story before we did this hour, something like 400, maybe 500 Brits have gone over to Syria to join ISIS. Are we going to say that the way we'll deal with this problem is we'll revoke all of those people's citizenship and we'll make them Syria's problem?
Well, I mean, I didn't know that a large amount of people. I mean, it's anything extreme in the world, terrorism, whatever, is not good and not healthy. Because the Middle East, which is a very incredibly controversial and difficult issue to be resolved. And you've got people with certain attitudes. I'm not being culturally critical. I'm just pointing out that people with different beliefs, different attitudes, and to way that they deal with problems. That react, live by the sword and die by the sword, and they're emotionally they're different constitution, and so and plus also it's a tit for tat situation there. It's quite appalling, But that's one of the things I love about being British. We do have a sense of being reserved, do have a sense of restraint, where we respect someone else's opinions, even though we might completely oppose them and don't agree with them, but we'll be respectful to whatever opinion until that's the opinion that's valid. We don't react to the extreme methods of someone of a different opinion, and turn to other extreme forms of retaliation because we don't like what somebody believes in, we don't like their religion, we don't like their political beliefs.
Is that but is that not exactly what we're doing with her? We're going for the extreme option of rendering her stateless, removing her statehood, removing her nationality, because she has gone to join this organisation, to marry a fighter for an organisation whose, express purpose is the destruction of the West. I mean, what we've done here is the description of what you're saying we're not. We're meant to be restrained. We're meant to be, following the rule of law, due process. That's the things we typically associate with Britain, or I think people would like to think they can associate with Britain.
I understand the point you're making, but with the other side, if we did give a citizenship, it was allowed back in the country, and it led to something else happening, and then we regret it.
Well, yeah, that's a point as well. That's a valid point. Roger, thank you for your call. Let's go to more of your calls now. Steve is in Croydon. Steve, good morning.
Good morning.
What do you think about this, mate? Would if you're a white person, I don't know, but would you want to go to one of these blackout evenings?
Well, I'm a white person, and I just think it's a terrible idea. It's come from America, where most things do, and we got nothing to learn from America about racism. Absolutely nothing. I think they're one of the most racist countries in the world. The police force are racist. The whole institution is racist against black people. But I think this is not. It's not a good idea to put black people up. It's just divisive, as far as I'm concerned. I mean,
why do you think it's divisive?
I think it's very divisive because at the end of the day, there's no difference between a black person and a white person. We've got different history, yes, but American history and English history and British history is completely different. And no one. I remember when Malcolm X came out in the cinemas years ago, quite a long time ago, and you might not like to hear this, but blacks didn't want white people in the audience. And if a white person was in the audience, they said you shouldn't be here, And that's how divisive it can be. And I think the idea of having separate audiences for one day, even 1 hour, it is wrong because it's making us different to them or them different to us.
Steve, I think if we're talking about, I absolutely accept your point about the institutions in the States being in some cases actually almost explicitly racist.
Yeah.
In comparison to here in the UK, and by the way, I'm not saying that to absolve us of anything.
No, we're still institutional racists in this country.
But I do think the conversations around race, particularly in progressive circles in the States, are more advanced than
No, they're not.
they are
No,
here.
they're not. No,
Okay,
they're not.
why do you say that?
Because they're not. Because
Well, you need to explain why.
because it's different history. They're saying, we're African Americans, and we want to put our point across. And I understand that.
And they have a much louder voice in public discourse in America than they do here, I think.
Yes, but we've got nothing to learn from that. The black population in this country has got no history with the American population. It's completely different.
What do you mean?
And, I mean, for instance, we've never had segregation in this country. America did. And I think that's why it's come from America.
When you say that, Steve, do you mean legislated segregation, or do you because in practice, I don't think you can make the argument that we didn't have segregation in Britain.
We didn't have segregation. I mean, I was born in Brixton in 1960, and I went to Stockwell Manor, and I was the minority. I was a white man, and I was a white boy, and I was a minority. But we never, in this country, we've never had, like they did in America, white only or black only, where you drink from like you couldn't drink in the school. You couldn't drink from the same
from the water fountains. Yeah,
you know.
You're talking about the colour bar, aren't you? Yeah.
We've never had that. We've never had that. So we've got nothing to learn from America.
Steve, I really have to take issue with your point that there isn't a sense of common history or identity with black people between the States and the UK, because...
But there isn't.
Okay, well...
different history.
So do you think the transatlantic slave trade only happened in America?
No, I don't. But
that's a common experience, isn't it?
No, what I'm saying to you... No, it's not a common experience. Not between America and Britain. I mean,
how? How is it not a common experience?
Well, because you're on about the slave trade.
Yeah.
It was the British that ended a lot of the slave trade.
Okay, and why did we have to end it?
Listen,
because it was happening here.
But you're on about slavery is a completely different argument to what you're saying.
What do you think? What do you think the transatlantic part of transatlantic slave trade refers to?
No, but what I'm saying to you, I'm not on about slavery. The discussion is not about slavery. The discussion is about...
You've come on and said there's no shared history between black people in the States and the UK. So yes, it is now about that.
It's completely different. The black people in America had to fight for their rights. They couldn't vote. They couldn't go to the same place as the white people. The blacks in this country have never had that. You know,
sorry, Steve. You don't think there are any black civil rights activists in the UK?
Of course there is. But what I'm saying, I know there's racism in this country.
Yeah.
Especially institutional racism, yes. And they like to fight for different things. But the difference is they haven't had to fight like in America. It's different. And what I'm saying...
I don't dispute that they're different, Steve. I'm not saying that they aren't different. That they are different. Clearly, they're different places. But to say that there isn't anything, that there isn't common experience, that there isn't I come back to this point about the transatlantic slave trade, right? The reason those people are there is because we took them there. Like there is a common history there.
Well, mate, listen. You're on about
I'm listening.
Slave trade. I'm not on about slave trade. I'm on about the play.
Okay.
And I think it's very divisive to say you have black knights and white knights. It's not right.
That's not what they're saying.
All the same, and it is what they're saying.
No, there's a couple of evenings in the entire run of the play where to address the fact that most of the time the audience is predominantly white. They say that we also want the theatre to be a welcoming space, an open space for black people. And if black people aren't coming to those other evenings, we're going to host a couple of evenings where we really, really try to get them to come.
Well, I still think it's wrong, because if black people don't want to go to theatre, so what? Why?
Well, I think the point is that they do want to go.
Well, they can go then. Who's stopping them?
No one's stopping anyone.
That's what I'm saying.
No one's stopping a white person from going to a blackout evening. No one's stopping a black person going to any of the other things, any of the other shows. It's about. As soon as you say tonight is a blackout night, you are segregating black people, saying this is your night. So you're making them different. And so when I tell you that white people are still allowed to go to those blackout evenings, how's that segregation?
Because it's being advertised as segregation.
No, it's not.
It's saying, well, white people can come, but we'd rather you not come. We'd rather black people come and not white people. So that is a form of segregation. They're not. It's wrong.
They're not saying they don't want white people to come.
Well, no, that's why
they're explicitly welcoming black people. Well, I actually think the distinction is quite important.
Well, the distinction is if they said this is a whiteout and like black, you black people you can come, but we'd rather the white people come. That's what they're saying. Yes, white people can come, we'd rather black people come. It's dangerous. It's very divisive.
Right.
And it shouldn't be like that, because we're all the same. Black or white, we're all the same.
Yeah, look, I agree. I agree with your point, Steve, that we all have equal rights and equal value, or at least certainly we should.
If you go to the theatre, you should go to the theatre to see whatever you want to see. And if the play is good,
okay, okay, fine. Let me put it like this, Steve. I accept your point. If you want to go, you should go, and if the play is good, you should go and see it. But if let's just say for a second that it's the case that there are some people out there who do want to do that, but don't feel comfortable watching a play about civil rights, about racism, and being the only black person sat in the audience. We say, okay, we're going to try and take some kind of action. We're going to impose some kind of principle to address that imbalance.
No, but that doesn't make sense, what you just said.
Why not?
Well, it doesn't make sense, because you just turned around and said, if the play is about civil rights and someone's uncomfortable about seeing it, well, they wouldn't go, would they?
I don't think we're getting anywhere, Steve. Thank you for your call, nonetheless. Peter's in Hendon. Peter, should we ban protest outside Parliament?
Yeah, what do you think? I mean, you talk about this is a peaceful, legitimate protest, week after week in, week out. This is a mob. This is a mob.
What is it when you say? Oh, okay. We'll come to that. We'll come to that in a minute, Peter.
Fascism is when you don't allow. Where you don't permit an opposing opinion. And let me tell you what we got here.
So what are you thinking? These people shouldn't protest. That's exactly what you just said fascism is.
Let me tell you what we got here. This is nothing to do, this is just a cover-up. It's not about Palestine. What we face here,
I think it is
a springboard for Islam, who, if it goes on like this, if we don't have an authority, because you're so blind and you're so blinkered,
they're going to take over. Oh, he's gone. Hung up. Immediate hang up from Peter in Hendon. Peter, thank you for your contribution. Let's interrogate this a little bit. I would have liked to have spoken to you about it, but considering you're not there to reply, it might now become a slightly one-sided conversation. I noted that there wasn't a hint of irony in your voice, Peter, when you said that the key sign of fascism is not allowing someone with opposing views to speak. Well, it would certainly appear that that's exactly what you're advocating for by saying that these people should not be allowed to protest. I think that is I think you've fallen foul of your own accusations there. So, I mean, that would probably be simply enough to I would say dismantle your argument. When you say mob, what do you mean? Are you genuinely inferring that the hundreds of thousands of people that are protesting, that constitutes a mob? Oh, Peter's back. Peter, you're back. Did you mean to hang up? Or you're still here? Oh, he's gone again. He's gone again. He's trolling us. He's trolling us. He's trolling us. We'll see. We'll see if we can raise him from the dead. We'll call him again, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see if we can get him back. The idea, this is a very common conspiracy theory, right? The idea that basically sort of, the white ethnic population is going to be replaced by an ethnic minority. It's called the Great Replacement Theory, and it's a far right conspiracy theory. Peter's back. Peter, are you there?
Yes, they're Jew haters.
Who are?
Most of those, a lot of those demonstrators, not all of them. It's just
how many? How many do you think of those protesters are Jew haters?
You go and count them, you idiot. What are you talking about? This is Jew hatred. It's just an excuse.
Peter, just to be clear, do you think there are hundreds of thousands?
Zionism is just another avenue towards anti-Semitism.
Do you think that there are hundreds of thousands of people that hate Jews? Is that what your position
is? Hundreds of thousands? Huh. And if you add them all up, it comes to several millions.
You think there are several million Jew haters in Britain?
Several. Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely.
What's the evidence of that, Peter?
What's the evidence?
Yeah.
Anti-Semitism morphs. In the old days, it was from the right.
No. Tell me the evidence.
It's from the far left.
Tell me, Peter.
How can they put someone
you've just
like
claimed that millions of people hate Jews.
Someone like you on LBC with its stupidity
I think your reaction to what I've said is probably part of the reason.
It doesn't stop. Haven't we got other things in this country to worry about? Do you think Gaza's the only place in the world where there's suffering
no,
and there's war?
I don't.
What about Sudan? What about what happened in Syria?
Congo.
That's quiet. Why? Because Jews are not involved, and it's not Western. And when the West is involved, you are chipping away at the foundations of this society.
You don't think the West is involved?
Until Western civilization will collapse.
Who makes the
far
Peter?
Left,
Peter,
the hard left, and you've got
Peter, please.
And you've got
Peter, please.
The Islamo bloc and the hard left together. That's wonderful. That they get together and they're chipping away at Western society, chipping away at our freedoms. And when they take over, do you think they're going to have Western freedoms?
Just move the phone.
What do they know
just move
about
the phone a little.
freedoms?
Just move the phone a little bit of a way away from your face, Peter.
To take over. That's what's going to happen. They come from primitive countries, most of them, not all of them.
Oh, here we go. This is.
And what do they know about democracy?
Peter,
and
last chance.
Stupid enough.
Last chance.
Stupid enough to fall for it. You idiot.
Sleep now. Sleep now. Okay, let's just try and run through this again. We'll see if we can get you. We'll see if we can get you back in a second, Peter. But I do just have to say to you, to suggest that the only reason people in Britain are interested in what's happening in Israel is because there are Jews involved. Who's making the bombs? Who makes the bombs that they're dropping in Gaza?
There, because they're not as stupid as we are. What we've allowed to take place.
Do you want to try and answer the question, Peter? Who's making the bombs that they're dropping in Gaza?
Tell me, who carries out all the terrorism? Who carries out nearly all the vehicles which run over people, the bombs, the Manchester bombing? How many Manchester bombings do you want to have? Who does that? Tell me.
Peter,
in Finchley, the Conservative headquarters was
terrible,
firebombed.
Absolutely horrendous.
Tell me who did it.
Well, I don't know who did it.
You don't know who did it? Think who did it, you idiot.
Do you know? Do you know who did it?
Who do you think did it, you idiot?
No, tell me who did it.
You're going to live in a bubble for it.
Tell me. No, Peter, tell me. Tell me who did it. Tell me who did it.
And the education, who do you think did it on the 24th of December?
Tell me. Tell me who you think it is. Tell me who you think did it.
You tell me who you think.
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. I have no insight. I have no insight. And the only reason, Peter, that you think you know who did it is because of your prejudice. The only reason you think you know who did it is because of your racism.
They had a decapitation in Holland in about 2005. It was Van Gogh was decapitated. I thought the time will come here when there'll be a decapitation on this street because these people don't know any bounds.
Who are these
I'll tell you
people?
that, because it won't get better.
Who are these people?
The more,
who are you talking about?
The more you feed them, the more.
Come on, Peter. Peter, don't dance around it. Just say it with your chest.
Decapitation or the.
Don't dance around it. Stop dancing around it. Say it with your chest. Say what you mean. Who are you talking about when you say these people? He's gone. 3 hang-ups in a row. Look, I'm just... I'm sorry I got a little bit... You got my back up there a little bit. I don't usually lose my cool like that, and so I apologise. But I've got to be honest, that is just key stage 1 racism right there. It is so entry-level. Who do you think did it? I've got no idea. I don't have any special insight into who was responsible. The inference, clearly, is that Peter thinks a Muslim did it. What's your basis for saying that? What's your basis for drawing a conclusion about a group of people? Is it fair for me to say that because Peter is an angry, hateful man, that I think all Peters are angry, hateful men? No. It doesn't scan, does it? To describe Islam as a primitive culture, as he did over the course of that call. It's just entry level. It's pathetic. It's hateful. I've absolutely no time for it. So I'm sorry if I raise my voice. Ian is a first-time caller in Barnet. Ian, what's on your mind?
Hi, thanks for taking my call, Oli, and good morning to you.
Morning.
I've been listening carefully. I'm probably not very good at talking, so it's my first time, but I'll try my hardest.
Don't worry.
I do think that protests should be allowed outside Parliament. Fundamentally, it's important for us to have that. But there is a grey line. I feel that some of the protests at the moment are more intimidating than protests and borderline dangerous.
Okay,
in
go
my
on.
opinion.
Go on.
I also think there's a lot of hypocrisy in the demonstrations at the moment. I just find the flags that are rising, the anger, which I do understand, some of the anger, but not all the anger, but I don't understand the hypocrisy. People are demonstrating for a country that does not have a democracy itself. You know, the people are being, the people in Gaza, if people really strongly think Israel's the sole problem of that situation, or then we're not giving the proper information to people. If you're gay and you wanted to protest in Gaza, you couldn't do it. You can do it here, but you can't do it there. Does that make sense? Have I made my point clear? I don't know.
If you have, Ian. And don't worry, you're doing a good job of speaking to me. So don't worry about that. So in the context then of this possible decision and the recommendation of this review to ban protest, right, outside democratic buildings. I mean, from what you've just said, right, that there's a problem in many Middle Eastern countries, right, that they don't have the same democratic freedoms as we do. A lot of autocracies, monarchies, etc. Surely that's as strong an argument as we'll get for maintaining our democratic rights here, that protest is something that's absolutely fundamental.
Absolutely, totally agree. But there is a borderline. And the reason why we're not seeing so many arrests is because our police are short at the moment. It'd be very hard for them to go inside and arrest someone without causing that protest to be a little bit unruly or even worse for the police.
Yeah, look, these big demonstrations, the actual policing operations, enormously difficult. I've actually been to the operations room where they run it, and they have this huge screened wall with all these sort of camera feeds coming in on it. They've got their sort of the highest level officers feeding back to the officers on the ground, and there is in some instances, sensitivity around whether or not they're going to inflame the situation. But at the end of the day, if a crime has been committed, I don't think we can seriously suggest that the police are going to hold off arresting someone from committing a crime because it might incite the crowd. I mean, unless they're dramatically outnumbered. But for these big events like this, to be blunt, they are mob-handed. The police, there's hundreds of them.
But it's very hard to arrest people when it's very hard to make laws black and white. There's a very grey area in the protest.
Tell me about this. Tell me about this grey area, because I think you're right. There is not a simple line between protest and abuse, and actually, I think perhaps most crucially is that it's subjective, right? Like what constitutes abuse for some people, other people will think is actually legitimate political criticism.
But it's exactly the same. I agree with you, and it's exactly the same. That guy I mentioned earlier, who was Muslim, who felt for the Jewish people. He said, I understand their plight. you've got to. I think you've got to understand that people are feeling intimidated or persecuted as much as the people who are protesting. If you're not thinking for both sides, and I say this to my kids, I say, you might think you're right, but think how the other people feel, and then pass judgment after that. Because without truly understanding both sides, and that's in any argument, whether it's this or not, you need to then you'll be able to unravel it and maybe find a resolve. And I don't think that's happening at the moment. I think we are such an angry nation at the moment. And I don't think the arrests are happening, or the people, because they're not getting prosecuted, because you can't prosecute. There's nothing to prosecute on. It's not clear. And I just think... Well,
Ian, I'm not sure about that,
You don't
mate.
think so?
No, well, police crime sentencing and courts bill comes through. You can do someone for causing a nuisance, right? For making too much noise. That the police have more power than I think at any point in recent history. But it's
not followed through. I mean, I actually agree with you. I'm not against you here, but I do think part of your points are a little bit, in my opinion, one-sided. And I like to think that there's a bit more to it than just, these protests. I've been around. I'm 50 years old. I've seen protests. I took my kids to London, and I'll stay clear of these protests more than I'll stay clear of any other protest. And I'll talk about the pro-Palestinian one. There's a sense of anger there, but it's not just, it's intimidating anger. I could understand anger. I could understand protests, flags standing around. Some of the chants, some of the things that are going on are scary. And if you've got a protest, but the people around London are scared to go in because of the protest, then is it really a good protest? You should be able to show the information, show the people why you're demonstrating, but not intimidate the people around you.
It's a really interesting point. But I do wonder, in the context of the history of political demonstration in this country, talk about the suffragettes, right? Putting bricks through windows, assaulting politicians. We've changed from that, haven't we? We are, generally speaking, much more peaceful in the way that we demonstrate and the way that people call for political change, right? It is much more a sort of conversation now than it is by force. I think, by the way, you can make... It's possible to argue that like a riot is a legitimate part of the political process. I think you can get to that place, right? If people's options are exhausted, they get to a point where physical resistance or at the very least civil disobedience is justified.
I could understand that in a dictatorship, but effectively some of these protests are actually causing the problem that you don't want.
What do you mean by that?
Well, because you're giving the government the legs to use as an excuse to cause more policing, because they're saying it's intimidating, and people are feeling intimidated. They're feeling, they're feeling vulnerable. Unless you're part of the protest, if it means nothing to you, I'm not saying the people in Gaza mean nothing, but the protest is not interfering in your life, and you're a tourist in London and you're seeing the shouting and some aggression, and I'm telling you, there's aggression there. You can see it. I've been there with my children. I had to move away. Then you're giving the police legs to do what we don't want them to do, and that's why I completely agree with you. But I think it's to point we're just doing the same as the racists by pointing at people.
Yeah.
But we're using two different categories: the protesters and the police.
Yeah.
We're doing the same, and that's not right. We should be able to live in a country where you can stand outside with a flag and say, "I completely disagree," and not get arrested. But nobody around you should be intimidated. I actually disagree with you, Oli, on this, that there should be no form of violence. If your country, if you've got a free country and you really don't like the way it goes, you've got to find a way of either trying to change it politically or correctly. And if you can't do that, then you're not in a democracy. Then you have to find a way to leave the democracy if possible.
That's an interesting point, Ian. Thank you for making it. This is it, isn't it? I think there's a lot of legitimate anger out there, and I think that's something which we kind of have to accept. These calls, right, these permanent calls for like a little bit more civility, is that I kind of think that they undermine the actual very nature of politics, which is of conflict, right? People believe their positions, they believe what they say, and it means a lot. The consequences can be dire, as in the instance that we're talking about here, right? We're talking about people dying. We're talking about a war. The stakes could not be higher. Shane's in Edinburgh. Shane, good morning.
Good morning. That text you just read out what a horrid thing to be writing garbage. Do you know, I despair at this world I'm living in, and I despair at the intellectual dross around this subject that we're talking about.
I hope you're not referring to this programme, Shane. We're doing our best.
I think people on the left do like a bit of intellectual dross on this sort of topic, I'm afraid.
Do you think?
Yeah, and I agree. Steve's heart is totally in the right place, and for the most part, I agree with what he was saying. Right, I'm going to give you an analogy,
Please.
And I'm going to talk about black people and theatre and something that... I'm gay. I live in a world that is predominantly heterosexual.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to exclude straight people coming into a gay bar that I might be drinking in. There are plenty of homosexuals that might want to do so, but I'm not one of them. What matters is that the person that comes in isn't going to be homophobic, rude to customers, cause trouble, pick on gays, beat us up, which has happened in the past. There are some gay people that think that that should be the way it is in a gay bar. There's plenty of places for straight people to go. But this sort of thinking is encouraging separatism. And this nonsense that black people aren't traditionally part of theatre audiences and will have this blackout night rubbish, quite honestly, they're not excluded from going. If I want to go into a heterosexual bar, I'm not excluded from going into it because I'm a homosexual, even though people might object to me if I'm a particularly outrageous gay man. But I'm still not excluded. This nonsense about being comfortable, get over it. We've got more that unites us than divides us. And quite honestly, there's more important things to get upset about. Now, let's turn it on its head. My brother is white. His wife is white. His stepdaughter is black. On this particular evening, would some people prefer it if she went to the theatre with her mother on a mixed night or whatever you want to call it? Nick Ferrari did a programme about this. There's some show coming on, it's about slavery, and he was giving the impression that there would be exclusively black audiences on these couple of nights. And he said that he had dated a black woman in the past and he wouldn't be able to go to the theatre with her and the argument is go on the other. Quite honestly, we need to get over this and unite people instead of being separate. My Trotskyite father would have objected to gay bars because it was separatist. Yeah. He felt straight. This is all intellectual dross. I was born. Yeah.
Can I come in? Your point is valid to a degree, but you're not excluded from going to one of these blackout nights if you're white.
Well, hang on. You can go. Where I am. I would be.
You can explicitly go. The one I'm talking about right now, you're welcome. And I've got to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised at your belief that if people are uncomfortable, they've just got to get over it.
Yeah, we do. I think we can't visit that on the whole. We should try and get over it and unite. There is more that... What's that expression of Joe Cox? There is more that unites us than divides us. Yep. And I think that's it. I think indulging people all the time is wrong. I really do. I think we need. I have been to the theatre with black people, black friends of mine, who have never told me they feel uncomfortable in there because they're the only black person or there aren't many people of colour in there or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's good for them, Shane.
So we've got to... No, this is separatist and it's wrong. I really do agree with Steve. I was born in Lambeth in 1960 like him. I didn't grow up in Lambeth, but I was born there. Quite frankly, I think we should all be trying to come together and to break down these... This suits a certain type of mindset. And I'm not surprised, Ollie, that you've got hooked into it. I certainly would object to any white-only audiences. I think that's absolutely ghastly. This is like a cultural apartheid.
So Shane, presumably you have a ginormous problem with the fact that 93% of theatre audiences are white, so are actually overrepresented with white people in them the rest of the time. That's segregationist, is it?
Black people... No, it's not black people...
Well, let's have a little bit of intellectual consistency, my friend.
...are not excluded from going to the theatre.
White people aren't excluded from attending these.
They could be, though. I mean, this is the whole thing. I don't think the colour of some black people say they feel uncomfortable in an environment that is predominantly white. Well, they live in this country which is predominantly white. And, you know, do they say, I walk down the street and I don't see another black person? Quite honestly, the colour, skin pigmentation is not something that should divide us. We should get over it.
Totally agree.
Agree with what?
I totally agree. It shouldn't divide us. It shouldn't divide us.
And going to the
But we are divided.
Going to the theatre black people go to nightclubs. I see lots of black people in nightclubs.
Right.
They're not excluded. My mother remembered when the Locarno in Streatham had a colour bar. They wouldn't let black people in. My father and my mother wouldn't go to it because it was so abhorrent to them. But
Shane, can I have to put this point to you. If there is an effective colour bar in place where audiences have so little black people in them that you could effectively say that they are being denied access, why would you not do something to try and address that? Because that's what this is.
That's what it. I'm sorry, I think it's separatist, and I don't think we should go down that road.
And so, is the status quo separatist?
Not necessarily. No, because what might exclude black people from going to the theatre is about how pricey it is. That may be a legitimate thing, you know.
What are you saying?
Try. Black people may not go to the theatre. It may not be part of their.
Why is that? Why is that a black person's problem?
It's not a black person's problem.
You just said it was.
No, they might be excluded because it's expensive and they may have less resources to spend on that
genuinely, Shane, are you genuinely coming on here and saying black people are poor? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Well, that's the inference.
No, you're playing this ridiculous intellectual game that you did with Steve. I'm not saying black people are poor. Some black people do not have the same resources that white people do. If you look at income and wealth distributions, you will see that black people sometimes do come out worse than some of their white counterparts.
Okay, Shane, let me put this to you.
Let me put this to you.
You've spoken a great deal, Shane. I think it's about time you had a little listen, my friend. If people can't afford to go to the theatre, would you agree with the theatre running, let's say of the 30 shows, maybe 1 or 2 evenings, where they run a pay what you can afford night, where people who can't... Yeah, a reduced fee. You'd agree with that.
A reduced price night.
You'd agree with that. To widen access to the theatre.
Everyone. That would apply to everyone.
Okay, right. So we're getting somewhere now. So you would agree with widening access to people, let's say from working class backgrounds, poorer backgrounds,
because
being able to attend.
Expensive. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a different thing about the economics of it, and I accept that to put these productions on is incredibly expensive for producers and theatres and all of this, and that's why it is expensive. But I could certainly see the virtue of saying we're having a cut price night on this night, and to try and improve. Or I'm not saying black people are poor, but I'm certainly sympathetic to the view that people might be excluded from going to the theatre because it is expensive.
So, Shane, if we accept then that working class people are underrepresented in theatre audiences, and you support measures that would widen access...
I don't think working class people are necessary. This idea that the theatre is this preserve of the middle classes, if that is so, it's probably to do with the price of it, but I can assure you I've been to the theatre with lots of working class people. I've encountered working class people at the theatre when I've had a drink in the interval, etc. They love theatre as much as I do.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that working class people don't go to the theatre. I think that's a slightly disingenuous interpretation of my remarks, but at least we are in agreement that taking measures to widen accessibility to theatre audiences is a good thing if people are poor, and maybe not so much agreement if those measures are in place if people are black, which is an intriguing position to hold, not one I agree with, but if that's what floats your boat, so be it, Shane. Tracy is another first-time caller in Minster-on-Sea. Tracy, should we ban protest from outside our political buildings?
Yeah, you should. Yeah, I'm raving with this because I've got family in Israel that are still in an hotel. Her house, my relation's house, was on the border when Hamas struck.
Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and they're still in the hotel. They've lost 3 relations on this.
No.
And all this about they should protest. The police I'm really unhappy with. They're still going around. All these Hamas people that's supposed to be all brave, they're still going around with the scarves around their faces. The police, the police, I'm so unhappy with. They should be ashamed of themselves.
Tracy, can I put it to you?
Nothing.
Tracy, can I put it to you?
All these people that are coming on the phone and saying, "I feel sorry for them. They should protest."
Yeah.
They should be in my shoes. They should be in my shoes.
Your shoes are incredibly difficult ones to be in, and I'm so sorry for what your family has experienced. Tracy, I just asked, can I just come in? Tracy, can I just come in?
They've lost their houses.
Yeah. And they've died.
And they're still in hotels, and they've lost people.
It's horrific.
These people are just going along with flags, and I bet most of them.
But Tracy, Tracy, this is a really important point, which I do have to make to you. You know, the actions of Hamas, those terrorists that did what they did to your family, you know, they are worthy of condemnation. They should face the full force of justice for what they did. But those people are not the people marching and protesting and expressing their views democratically and peacefully. They're two separate groups of people, and whilst Hamas are awful...
To be truthfully honest with you, I really don't care about them. I don't care. They're sitting on our buildings, they're destroying our buildings.
What?
This is our country.
What do you
mean? It's not their country. This is our country.
What do you mean destroying our buildings, and what do you mean then?
Well, they're sitting all on our buildings over here. Our scimitar, they're doing our scimitar, they're spraying it. You've seen it. The police are just sitting there doing nothing. I am absolutely raving. And the police are just sitting there doing nothing.
The police aren't doing nothing, are they?
Look,
they're guarding the cenotaph.
They're not doing nothing. They're not doing nothing. The police are not doing nothing.
I don't think that's fair.
I've got more to say than anything on this. Because my son lives in Canada, and he's took 3 of the family in his house at the minute to give them a break.
Yeah.
So they have to go back to Tel Aviv now and then to see how things are going. Because there's one that they haven't found yet. There's still bones that they haven't found yet of one of their uncles.
God.
So don't tell me that these people in these flags are good people.
But Tracy, it's really important that we make the distinction. Those people with those flags,
I don't care about them.
They're not the people that killed your family, are they? They're not the same people.
I don't care about them. I wish they'd all go. I wish they'd go where they come back from.
Who's they?
The Islam people. I wish they'd go where they'd come back from.
Which ones?
Because I bet half of them are asylum seekers, and if you found out about them,
they're British citizens. They're British citizens.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
What do you mean? How do I know that?
How do you know that?
What do you mean? How I don't understand what you're saying. The 4 million British Muslims aren't British.
Flags, because most of them have gone disappearing anyway. So how do you know that personally?
Tracy, I really want us to try and stick to the facts on this.
Because I'm so wild. All you do is stick up for them. All you do is stick up for them. You haven't got... honestly, I haven't heard you say anything about the British, anything nice.
We're talking about British people right now, Tracy.
No, you're not.
Yes, we are.
Saying anything.
Yes, we are.
You've not said anything about Hamas. I've not heard you say anything about Hamas.
I literally told you on this phone call right now that what they did on October 7th was appalling. I said it to you minutes ago.
Absolutely appalling.
I said it to you minutes ago.
Appalling.
Tracy, I really have to drill into this point. Are you suggesting that the Muslim people that are protesting against what happened in Palestine are not British?
Some of them, no. Some of them are not. Some of them are not.
What do you mean by that?
When you're in my situation at the minute, when you put yourself in my situation at the minute, and I've got a daughter-in-law that is absolutely sobbing because she's lost most of her family, then you'll know. At the minute, you don't know. So I don't really care who comes on after me and who says what. I really don't care.
And Tracy, the families of the thousands of people that have also been killed in Gaza and feel the way that you feel now about your family, is there anything to be said for those people?
No, I don't care. I don't care because I'm on the same situation. You're in the same situation.
You're in the same situation, but you don't care.
I'm in the same situation. I'm losing family.
There's no empathy.
I'm losing family.
So there's no empathy there.
Them day marching. I'm not marching every Saturday, am I?
So there's no empathy.
I'm not marching. This is not going to get us anywhere. So
I would
we're
agree.
a little country. We're a little island.
Yeah.
It's not. We ain't going to stop the war.
Well, I actually think we can. I think international pressure is possibly only one of the ways there. But Tracy, I'm reluctant to do this, and I mean this in the nicest way possible. To be quite honest with you, this idea that you don't care about people who are experiencing the same thing as you, whose own families are dying. You don't have any empathy for that person.
No, because I've got
selfish.
empathy for mine. I can't have empathy for everybody in the world, can I?
Well, no, but for some of them. Colin's in Brentford. Colin, good morning. What would you like to say?
What I wanted to stay with around you before your break was about extremism. Okay.
Yes.
Let's start with Islam. Islam is extreme.
Sorry. Islam, as in the entire faith.
Yes, of course, the entire faith.
1 billion people. You think there are more than?
It's more than 1 billion. But however, yes.
You think there are? Sorry, I was expecting to say.
There you go. You're the man who rang me back said you wouldn't interrupt, and there you go with your straw man immediately. Listen to what I'm going to tell you.
Okay, sure.
Okay,
the floor is yours.
Your colleague, whom you invoked in this colleague, Mr. Ferrari. Okay, he continually injects this mythical silent majority of Muslims. Now, where are they? Where were they when they were kicking drummer? I'm sorry, I'm so angry I forgot the young man's name. It's a terrible shame. Drummer Rigby. Where was the silent majority when they cut his head off and used it as a football? Where was the silent majority in Charlie Hebdo?
Am I allowed to speak yet? Or
No, you're not. No, you're not. Not yet. Let me put it to you that we now in this country have a state within a state. We have 200 Sharia courts operating throughout the country.
What evidence do you have for that?
There you go again, more strong. I read the papers. I read the official. What is it with you? This is all you guys do this.
Ask you to provide evidence for your claims.
The narrative, you introduce a straw man. Okay?
Sorry, do you think me asking you to prove something is straw manning?
Where is the silent majority? Where were they? Did you see that godless animal defiling the cenotaph and setting the Union Jack on fire? Now, there was 100,000 people there. Where was the silent majority that dragged that fool off the cenotaph and put it where he should have been put? Where is this silent majority? You tell me. Where is it?
Put where he should have been put. What does that mean?
Here we go. What he should have put behind
Colin, I'm really going to have to... You can't just say, here we go again, every time I respond to something you say. Yes, it's a conversation.
Yes, but your producer said you wouldn't interrupt.
Yeah, okay, so what? Do you want the rest of the programme? Do you want the rest of the programme?
Let me ask you once again before you do it. Okay. Where... you're laughing now. Now you're being extreme. You're laughing and chuckling because that's your defence, because you can't answer the question. Where is the silent majority? Where is it?
What do you mean by where is the silent majority?
This 99% of good, honest, decent Muslims protesting that your colleague Ferrari keeps talking about. Where are they?
I don't understand what you're asking me. What you're asking me to say? Where are British Muslims?
Anti-British nonsense, time after time after time.
Oh, here we go. I'm just doing down the country.
Yeah, listen, I'm leaving.
He's gone. He's hung up. Well, I wanted to ask Colin if he was so keen on asking me where the silent majority are. I wanted to ask him where the 200 Sharia courts that apparently exist in Britain are. But he hung up before I had the opportunity to ask him that. Goodbye, Colin. It was a pleasure. I don't think I'm an extremist. I've got to be honest with you. I'd challenge anyone who's just listened to the last 5 minutes or so we had on the phone with Colin there. Which of us do you think is the extremist? The man. We've actually just had we've had another Colin text in, sort of disowning himself from the previous Colin. Doing good Collins down. Colin in Tandy. Sorry about that. Colin in Rochester, I should say. Where is the silent majority? I guess that's the thing about silent majorities, isn't it? I would respond. I'd respond with where are all the good Collins? Apparently in Rochester. God, that was a little bit sad, wasn't it? James is a first-time caller in Sutton. James, do you agree with Billy? Should we bring him back?
I don't think we should bring him back, but I feel as though he's been hard done by, if I'm honest. I think his tenure as Prime Minister was during one of the hardest periods that in recent times.
Yeah, in the pandemic.
In the pandemic, he had to go through Brexit as well.
Yeah.
So he had to fulfill a lot of promises, and obviously he wasn't perfect. But if I'm honest, I think he did very well with the situation he had.
What's the evidence for that, James? What in the same thing? I'll put to you same thing I put to Edward. You know, if we're doing pros and cons, what's in the pros column? Like, just make the case for Boris Johnson for me.
Make the case for Boris Johnson. He was undoubtedly popular. He remains really popular, despite all of the things he's done wrong.
Okay, popular in spite of the things he's done wrong. We've got that.
What did he do? Well, he followed through with Brexit, which was the mandate that he was elected on.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got Brexit, and I know obviously some people will argue that's been, you know, not a success, but obviously we are aware of the kind of the divide in this country about Remain and Leave, but obviously for people who are you know, Leave minded, we can call that a success. So we've got popular despite getting things wrong, and we've got Brexit so far.
Yeah. So what are your opinions on Boris then? Are you?
I'm not a fan. I think he's a liar. I think he's dishonest. I think that's a serious problem when you encounter the high office of state and are responsible for things like a country's pandemic response, and you have to be across the detail when things like objectivity, truth, fact are deeply, deeply relevant.
I feel as though you could say that about most politicians.
I think you probably could. I think he's one of the more egregious examples. I think it was Rory Stewart who said about him that, you know, a lot of people lie. Boris Johnson has 1,000 different ways of lying.
Yeah, it's politicians in general. So I voted for Boris in the last general election.
Why? What did you like about him? Why did you want to vote for him?
I'm just not a big fan of Keir.
Well, okay, it was Corbyn. It was Corbyn, wasn't it, at the time?
No, I voted for Corbyn in the last election.
Well, in 2019?
Yes.
So when did you vote for Boris?
There's been a subsequent election, hasn't there?
Oh, do you mean 2017 you voted for Corbyn, and then 2019 you voted for Boris? That would be the general election that Boris... Right,
exactly.
Okay, got you. Okay.
Because I feel as though there is a very partisan situation in politics where you have to either lean right or lean left.
Yeah.
And it's created a very big divide, which I don't identify with. I feel as though there's things to be taken from both.
I think people would agree with you on that point, James, but I have to say, to go from voting for Jeremy Corbyn in 2017 to then voting for Boris Johnson in 2019, that's a big jump. in terms of politics. You know, we're not talking about two parties of the centre here, are we? We're talking about, well, possibly socialism, but certainly social democracy on the one hand with Corbyn, and then kind of, a pretty right-wing, isolationist, nationalist government pursuing Brexit with Boris Johnson. Those two things are quite far departed from one another.
Yeah, no, definitely. Many people would argue that Jeremy Corbyn is about as far left as you can get for a Labour PM candidate, and many people would say that Boris Johnson is as far right as we've had PM in a long time.
I don't know about that.
Well, who would you say is further right then?
Liz Truss, probably. Well, actually, I don't think Liz Truss by her actual conviction, but I think Liz Truss by what she attempted to do with her kind of libertarian economics. I think Rishi Sunak is much more right wing than people give him credit for. To be quite honest with you, I think he's far more right wing than Boris Johnson is, for example.
In terms of his economics,
fiscally, I think he is quite hawkish. I think it's more on the social side of things, to be honest with you. So I think Rishi Sunak is much more of a social conservative than Boris Johnson was. I mean, Boris Johnson, sort of a supporter of gay marriage when he was mayor of London, a supporter of a liberal immigration policy. Sunak's government, we've seen dramatic attacks on the right to protest. We've seen dramatic attacks on the trade unions, some pretty draconian stuff around banning things like laughing gas, refusing to ban conversion therapy for trans people, making it so that, if there are trans kids in schools, that their parents are informed of the way that they are in school. I think there's a strong argument for Rishi Sunak being much more of a social conservative than Boris Johnson.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. But I find it very difficult nowadays to find a party which selects all of my views altogether.
Yeah, don't we all? It's the nature of a two-party system. James, thank you for calling for the first time. You're welcome back. Jack's in Wood Green. Jack, what's on your mind?
Yeah. I mean, I think the law's going to end up being changed because the marches need to be controlled and limited. I mean, it's getting ridiculous.
How so?
Every week it's just getting ridiculous. This is something that's happening off in another country, another part of the world. We don't control it at all.
We have an input.
Well, not really. I mean,
we do.
We can vote on all this, but ultimately we don't control it. But
international pressure. It's the support of the West, I think, that's integral to Israel's actions.
Can be limited. You don't need to be having them every week like this.
So what's the argument?
These marches,
what's the argument? Free speech sometimes.
Harassment.
Fortnightly free speech every other week. Will we have it?
Pardon?
Fortnightly free speech, is it? Protest every other Saturday?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, you can limit it. I mean, you could have them, once every week for a month, and then if they for a few months, and then if it carries on, you just limit them to once a month or something. It's getting ridiculous. But behind these marches is threats and harassment. So you've got people and groups who are organising threats and harassment under the cover of this campaign.
Interesting. Okay. Jack, thank you for your call. We're going to go to some of your calls now about whether or not these undercover agents should be protected, whether they're operating for the intelligence agencies, whether they are operating on behalf of the police. Andrew's in Chigwell, in Essex. Andrew, good morning. What do you think about this?
I think that there should be the police or spies should be protected. A lot of the time, why would one become a spy if you're going to be prosecuted? But the spies that go out there, they are protecting the masses. They're protecting Britain. They're protecting groups of people. For example, they would be protecting the Jews to find out what is planned to be what is planned against them.
Andrew, I do have to raise the point with you that the people that they were killing were British citizens.
Well, the question you actually asked was, should spies be immune in general?
Yeah.
Obviously, there are certain circumstances, but they are sent on missions, and if British people do get killed in the actual mission, so be it. How many people would be protected against what they heard straight about now? Now, occasionally, there's going to be collateral damage. There's going to be problems as there were back then. But I think now it is far too... the police and the spies are bound up in paperwork and restrictions, which is a bad thing for Britain and a bad thing for finding out what is actually going on and taking action against the so-called bad guys.
Andrew, is there a limit?
No. Not at all.
No limit?
No, there's no limit, because these spies should have total freedom to protect us. And they can't be thinking,
this is the thing I'm really trying to drill into here, because I understand the logic of what you're saying. I totally understand it, right? I fully understand it. But how can we say they're protecting us if, one, the people they're killing are literally British citizens, and two, if, as this interim report, the Canova report, has found, that actually more people died as a result of his behaviour than were actually saved?
Again, this is just one example. I'm sure that obviously we can't be told, but there are many, many examples where we have saved. They have been saved. There are many examples where bombs have been plotted in London or in the UK, but if it wasn't for these undercover spies doing whatever they're doing, many would be killed.
I take your point. I understand it, but I'm deeply uncomfortable with the idea that there isn't a limit on what these people should be allowed to do. I really think there has to be one. Andrew, thank you for your call. Brian is in Cullercoats in Tyne-and-Wear. Brian, is Shamima Begum our responsibility? Good morning.
Hi, Ollie. Great show. This is just my opinion. I'm actually glad she's in Syria, and I hope she stays there for the rest of her life. She doesn't deserve to come back here. And I tell you the reason why. Because when I think about Shamima Begum, I always think about those two fellas from Scotland, the charity workers who went out there, took a truckload of food out there. They were tortured and beheaded.
Yeah.
And, you know, they had daughters, and they lost their parents. The daughters lost their dads, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but if we're going to bring back Shamima Begum, we may as well bring back Abu Hamza. He hasn't actually done anything terrorism. You know, he's obviously said stuff and written stuff, and he's did protests, but he actually hasn't murdered anybody, has he? But he's actually languishing in an American jail. So, you know, if they're going to bring back Shamima Begum, they may as well bring back Abu Hamza, you know. But, yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm glad she's out there, and I hope she stays out there for the rest of her life.
Why are you glad that she's out there, and why do you want her to stay for the rest of her life? As punishment, is that? Because
those two fellas, I'll think about them all. When I think about her, I think about those two guys who took a truckload of food out there from Scotland, two Scottish lads. I remember seeing them on the TV in jumpsuits, and they were executed. I mean, and it was all over the... I mean, my memory's hazy about it now, but at the time, they actually put it online, and it was dreadful. You know, anybody who was able to watch that must have had a sick mind to see that. You know, those two guys didn't deserve to die, and that's, you know, we're not going to bring them back, are we? So, yeah, I'm sorry. At 15-year-old, right, I wouldn't have had the know-how to go on a plane to a foreign country, get myself a passport like they did, you know, and do what they did. I wouldn't have been able to do that. So, obviously, that was well planned, and she obviously glorified the Islamic State. So, yeah, you know, I'm sorry, but that's how I feel about it. I just don't want her back. And a lot of people say, oh, she's a female, we're feeling sorry for her. Tough. You know,
well, I think the fact that she was a child is more relevant than the fact that she was a woman.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. That's what. Sorry. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. But at the time, you know, when I think about those two fellas, they're not coming back at us. So
no, they're not.
You know, I'm sorry, Ollie, but that's how I feel about it, mate, honestly. I just don't think she should be allowed to come back. And
so is it punishment? Is that why you don't think she should come back? It's punishment for the crimes of Islamic State, which she went out there to sort of join up with?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say, no, she did. We didn't know what she was doing out there. Obviously, she married so-called freedom fighter, Islamic State freedom fighter. And I'm just glad. No doubt she will probably become, if Labour get back in power. I do support Labour, but I hate to say this, but I think if Labour gets in power, they will actually they will probably end up bringing her back.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think they would do that? Because they have a greater respect for human rights and international law?
They just the Labour Party kind of they probably believe that she get some kind of trial or justice or whatever. I think they would probably bring her back. That's what I feel. I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
Would that be a bad thing, getting her justice?
I don't want her back. I mean, to me, she's a traitor to the country. I know she's born here, whatever, yeah. To me, she's a traitor to this country. And like I said, them two fellas who died, because I heard people like her going out there, if you're going to feel sorry for her, then those are the girls who died. Why did they die?
Yeah. Look, Brian, I don't dispute that. I think she turned her back on her country. I think there are ways in which you punish that. I think there are ways in which you go after someone. If there is, I don't not necessarily know what the crime would be. I mean, would it previously would have been crimes against the crown or something like that. I don't know, maybe high treason. I think if people do things like that, then we have mechanisms for dealing with them. I think we're basically abdicating. We're turning our back on the responsibility of doing the difficult thing and dealing with it, and just being like, well, you're in Syria now. It's up to you. I don't know. I see where you're coming from, Brian, and I'm not necessarily agreeing with you. I think if you go and join up an organisation whose express purpose is the destruction of the country you're from, that's a problem for me. Seamus is in Wallington. Seamus, what would you like to say?
Morning. I listened with interest to the lady that called who had experience on the marches, and my genuine feeling, having watched a lot of media and read a lot about these marches over the last month, 2 months, I think they are more anti-Israeli marches than they are pro-peace marches. But you're quite right. In a very large group of people, you will have many people with different agendas. And there are a lot of people who are pro-peace, and there are a lot of people who are anti-Israel. My issue, I do think the Prime Minister is right to call out the fact that there are people on our streets demonstrating now that do not share our values and are a threat to our democracy. And they've been encouraged by the awful behaviour of our police in not addressing people who are openly demonstrating, proposing genocide to Israel, are anti-Semitic, are wearing terrorist insignia, promoting terrorist organisations, and not being addressed, as well as a High Court judge who should have jailed those two women for wearing those dreadful T-shirts. So
these people are being arrested, though, aren't they? You can't support a terrorist group. To do so is a crime. The police will arrest you if you do so.
Well, in the early marches, in the first 4 to 5 weeks of the marches, very little was being done to address hate speech and people promoting. People were walking the streets dressed in Hezbollah and Hamas regalia, covering their faces and making chants of death to Israel. We've put a message up on the side of Parliament promoting the genocide of Israel, and no one has been called to task. And our own High Court judges are allowing this to happen and not jailing people who should be jailed. So the Prime Minister's got a right to call this out, and I, for one, believe that he's right. I think it's a massive problem. Our politics is deliberately being manipulated to focus on an issue. Where are the people marching to ask for the release of the hostages taken by Hamas?
There was a march, wasn't there? There was a march in London for that.
One march. one march. How many of these pro-peace marches have you seen people carrying posters demanding for Hamas to... And by the way, Hamas, there's an election tomorrow or next week. Do you honestly think that Hamas would carry the vote of the Palestinian people, the innocent Palestinian people?
Well, Seamus, it's very hard to poll in Palestine for obvious reasons, but there are indications that support for them is still pretty strong in Gaza as a result of what's happened. In terms of signs calling for the release of the hostages, yeah, I've seen a few. It's completely anecdotal. It's not representative of anything. I've seen a few, but I've also seen. I'd probably say it's about as many as I've seen sort of that carry horrible anti-Semitic tropes. I don't think it's possible to categorise these marches in a way because of the behaviour of minority. Joe is in Liverpool. Joe, is Shamima Begum our responsibility? Good morning.
No, she isn't. No, I think
why?
Because she didn't. She swore an allegiance to a jihadi caliphate. So regardless of what state she goes to, if she was to be given citizenship elsewhere, she would be a threat to everyone else.
So that sounds like she's possibly committed an act of terrorism.
She's being complicit in the recruitment of terrorist sympathisers. Yes,
that sounds like a possible criminal charge.
Possibly.
So we should put her through the courts, charge her with the crime, and if she's guilty,
you said about interviewing her. So if you bring her back to the UK, what incentive would she have to provide you with the full backstory of her whereabouts and what connections she might have because she was in a terrorist cell? So she wouldn't have any incentive. Why not just send people out to her in Syria to interview her?
What, to see if we can...
To extrapolate any credible intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no point bringing her back. Why would you reinstate her citizenship for that? Just send someone out to go and see her.
Because she's...
What you're suggesting is... She's not, is she? Because that's being revoked. But what you're suggesting is like bringing a fox to a chicken coop and expecting the chickens to cohabitate with the fox. It would be silly to do that. She's already a threat to national security.
So she's the fox, yeah? She's the fox, and we're the chickens. So, on the one hand, we have a 24-year-old woman who went to join a terrorist group at the age of 15, and on the other, we have the entire force of the British security state, our police, our intelligence services, and our prison system. And you're describing her as the fox and the British security state as the chickens.
Well, yeah, she wasn't indoctrinated by the British state to go out and join a jihadi, was she?
No, she wasn't, but she is our responsibility as a British citizen.
Well, she's not a British citizen, and I just don't think she's our responsibility. I think if we bring her back, then you're being too lenient, and it opens the floodgates for everyone else.
Well, I don't think it is lenient, because she would come back and face the force of the law. It's due process. It's rule of law. You know,
to be a British citizen is to have British values, and she doesn't have British values. She doesn't tolerate people of indifference, or different beliefs.
Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, fair enough. I take your point. What do you think British values are?
I think British values is a tolerance towards people of difference. The rule of law, as you mentioned before. I think to support equality and diversity.
Okay, that's interesting. Do you think you're being tolerant of her right now?
I'm being pragmatic.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Because
so you got to be pragmatic. You can't just,
the things you're saying, Joe. The logical conclusion of the argument you're making, which is that people who aren't tolerant or believe in the rule of law. I
don't believe in a jihadi caliphate.
Yeah, I
believe in democracy.
I'm not suggesting you do. But, for example, I don't think it would be very difficult for me to make the argument that the current Conservative government is an intolerant one. And not only that, actually, is one that is prepared to, has done, and wants to break international law and does not follow due process.
But I don't like to say it, but I think the Tory government is doing the right thing. And if Labour were to get back into power, they would bring her back. Absolutely.
But this is the thing I'm saying to you, though, is they don't adhere to those same values that you've just laid out. So as a result of which, are we going to jettison them from the country? I don't think it's possible. Joe, thank you for your call. Gina, should we ban protest outside Parliament? Good morning.
Morning. I want to say protest and protesting anywhere, why do you have to do it when you feel that you have to take a day off work? You have to feel that you're not confident in this country of being who you are, where it's Parliament and it's the MPs that are putting this status around us to make us feel that way. Oh, as long as we've got America as being our allies, we can do what we want. People respect us with our...
Gina, am I to understand that are you suggesting that people shouldn't protest, that there isn't a need for it?
I'm suggesting there's such a thing as there is democracy. This started and stemmed from Brexit. It's like when Tony Blair was in and there was a Labour government, everything was calm, everything was at ease.
Biggest protest in Britain's political history under Tony Blair. More than 1 million people marched in opposition to the Iraq War.
Exactly. And why? And why? Because the people had their say and it was done rightly, not for MPs and people today in Parliament and the Speaker of the House. I don't give a flying monkeys, and I won't say the A word, what people think as in regards to, but that Speaker left.
Well,
that Speaker left due to the fact that you had your Brexit, then you had your COVID.
Well, I think we're getting a little bit off track here, Gina. But thank you nonetheless for your call. Ambrosine is in Finchley. Ambrosine, do you trust the government to define what extremism is?
Yes, and I want to explain why.
Please.
I run an organisation monitoring anti-Semitism, and I take a lot of the extreme far-right cases on.
Okay.
Now, you would obviously say that they would be extremists, but what we're seeing now is the Red-Green Alliance.
Okay.
The Red-Green Alliance are the extreme far left and the Green, which extremist Islamists. And yesterday we were at the march, and there were 2 young girls who were heard to say that she supported Hamas and that Hamas should have killed all the Jews. Now, I'm not going to go any further, but it's all on film. They were arrested, quite rightly, by the Metropolitan Police. There were others there that were doing the same, that were saying that to, unfortunately, only a couple of Jews that were across the Westminster, across the road. But now what we're seeing is an alliance, and the government are absolutely right. I've got them on video, I've got them on film. We're seeing an alliance between the extreme far right and Islamism. And when I mean Islamism, I mean Islamist extremist.
Ambrosine, I think you just said there's an alliance between the extreme far right and Islamists.
Yes.
You meant the far left, didn't you?
No.
Oh, you think there's... Sorry, okay, you're saying there's an extreme...
There are now extreme far right groups who I will not name.
Okay.
Who are doing...
there's basically... what you're saying is there's an overlap in terms of their anti-Semitism,
the
right?
The Red-Green-Brown Alliance,
between these
all
extremists.
Overlapping the horseshoe theory. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Okay.
And what it is, they are against... They used to be just against Israel. But now they are so extremely anti-Semitic and anti-Jewish that they are combining themselves together, and it is frightening. It is absolutely frightening.
Ambrosine, I think the point you've just made, the thing you've referred to, I don't think there's anyone who would seriously suggest that supporting Hamas isn't an extreme position. They're categorised as a terrorist group. Anyone who says that we should kill all Jews is clearly someone that poses a threat to our society, that we should not entertain. I mean, that is deeply problematic. I guess what I'm getting at here is extrapolating out from some people doing some deeply wrong, disgusting things and drawing conclusions about broader groups in the same way that Colin's sort of calling me up and saying, that there are 1 billion extremists in the planet because they're all Muslim and they're responsible, for example, for the murder of Lee Rigby. Oh dear, is everything okay? I can hear someone shouting in the background. Is everything all right?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Someone in the house.
Okay, yeah, sure. So it's not right to draw a conclusion about a broader group, is it, based on the behaviour of a few people?
No, but it's getting worse, Oliver. It's absolutely getting worse. Over the past
no one's
5
called me
years,
Oliver. I haven't been called Oliver, I think since I was a naughty little boy.
Over the past 5 years, we've had an increase of extreme far right.
Mm. I think the Met say that's the fastest growing extremist.
That was the fastest growing extremist section of society, but now we're seeing a combining of extreme far right. Yes, extreme left, which we call, that, but with also extreme Islamism. And it's not from October the 7th. This has been going on now for at least 5 years. And I've taken many people to court. Many people have been put away because of it. And it is, as I said before, it's frightening. I'm not scared as a Jewish person to go into London when these marches take place, because I've been countering them for decades, and the mainstream or the media have not covered them.
What marches are you referring to, Ambrosine?
These are marches against Israel. The River to the Sea has been going on for decades. The Al-Quds March, which will be coming up in May, which happens every year, has been going on for three decades.
So this is what I'm talking about, though, Ambrosine, isn't it? It's like what you're referring to there. People shouting, "We support Hamas." That's wrong. That's absolutely wrong.
Yeah,
but to describe the entire march as being for one that's calling for the destruction of Israel.
Well, we were part of a group that managed to get the Hezbollah flags down at these marches. They were actually waving PFLP flags, Hamas flags, and Hezbollah flags at these so-called, inverted commas, pro-Palestinian. They're not really pro-Palestinian, Oli. They are anti-Israel marches.
Right.
And we have to really define that. And the extremists, if you saw some of the videos that I've got, the whole lot of them were coming across roads, in Kensington, running across roads to try and do harm to us.
But Ambrosine, like you said, a small amount of people at these marches are doing things that are unacceptable, but they aren't representative of the entire march. These marches have arrest figures that are comparable, in fact, lesser than Glastonbury Festival.
No, but yes. The Metropolitan Police only took on the, inverted commas, arrests when the IHRA definition was brought in.
What does that have to do with the protests that have been going on at recent weekends?
Well, they understood that the councils, the police, the authorities understood what anti-Semitism was. Before that, they didn't know that these chants that they were shouting at the Jews opposite were anti-Semitic. But now they understand, under the definition, that certain slogans, certain things that they put on placards are were anti-Semitic. And now they realise that. And now that they've adopted this definition, they understand what anti-Semitism is. It's not just hating a Jew and shoving a brick or a stone or spitting at a Jew in the street. It goes much further than that.
So, Ambrosine, is it your position that, I don't know the exact numbers right on these marches, but let's say it's 200,000 right on weekend. Is it your position that all 200,000 of those people are extremists?
No, 200,000 people may be, inverted commas, marching for what they believe they see as a genocide. They don't actually do the should I say, they don't actually mention the 1,300 who were brutally decapitated, raped and assaulted, killed, murdered, and with hostages. They don't see that side. 200,000 people together do not understand mainly what the definition of anti-Semitism is and what they're actually doing. Because you cannot teach every single person why they are marching, what is wrong in why they are marching. They're allowed to call for a ceasefire. They're allowed to say what they believe is what they believe they see, but they haven't seen what I've seen and what I know what is behind all of this.
Well, I'm not sure that you can do as good a job of surveilling the marches as the Metropolitan Police, who aren't arresting people in particularly high numbers. Ambrosine, we've got to leave it there because we're running out of time. Bob's in Gillingham. Bob, what would you like to say? Good morning.
Good morning, Ollie. Just bear with me, just first time I got through. But you're calling for like the justice system and all that. How many appeals has she had?
This is the second time, I think, and then it'll be going up to the Supreme Court for the next one.
Yeah, I mean, she's got people, solicitors and whatnot, fighting for her, who are very intelligent, and she's lost those appeals.
So do you think as a 15-year-old, Bob, do you think as a 15-year-old she's fully responsible for the things that she does?
I think she's responsible to a certain extent, yes. But how long was she out with ISIS?
She's been out there for 9 years.
Yeah. Well, therefore, she's not been 15 all that time. She's committed crimes out there.
We don't know that.
Certain people do. They must know that by.
Well, I guess you would. I guess you would find that out by investigating her, right?
Well, she must have been investigated for having a reason to lose the appeal.
Well, the appeal,
the lawyers and that must be fighting for her.
The appeal is more around whether or not the Home Secretary has the legal power to revoke the citizenship. It's not about whether or not it's justified. So it's kind of a question of process rather than a question of the right and wrong of the decision.
Yeah, but her lawyers and that must have been told why they had her citizenship revoked.
Well, it's because she went out there to join ISIS, right? That's why they've done it. But what I'm saying is, I don't think
what she done while she was out there.
I don't think it's good enough to say you've done this bad thing, therefore you're no longer British. I just genuinely don't. I think if you do something wrong, you face due process, the power of the law.
Well, she has faced the process twice. She's lost the appeal.
Yeah, but that's in relation to her citizenship. That's not in relation to her alleged crimes or otherwise.
Yeah, but that is the thing, though. She's lost her citizenship and she's lost the appeals twice.
In relation to her citizenship, but it's not the same as her facing trial for what she has or hasn't done whilst in Syria or leaving here to go out there. Bob, thank you for your call. Richard's in Bournemouth. Richard, what would you like to say?
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, you know what? As a white person, I wouldn't go and see this play on principle.
Okay, go on.
Okay, let me elaborate on that. So, years ago, I did a lot of acting, particularly theatre, and I did a few African arts productions. And my first role, I played a white racist police chief. My second production, I played a white man of privilege with a mixed race wife. Anyway, over the years, I've just seen a kind of a regression from the black community. Things have gotten more segregated. Now, 4 years ago, when the BLM stuff was on, and a lot of black folks saying, but they want us, they want our music. But they want our music, they want what but they don't want us. So, I see, let's say, this community's just separating themselves over the years. But
well, that's certainly a unique perspective, Richard.
Yeah. So, trying to spit it out here.
Yeah.
So for the 2 nights they don't want white folks there, okay. But then, so a lot of white people, they're going to, to hell, I'm not going to go. So they're not going to get the receipts. And then there'll be complaints. Oh, right, white people are prejudiced to go and come and see this show.
Richard, there is a crucial difference here, which I have to point out, which is not that they don't want white people to go. It's that they explicitly want black people there.
Yeah.
There is a distinction there.
Yeah. But, for years, we were told, we're all equal, everything else. But, equal, but we're not the same, I'm not actually particularly peed off about the fact that the whites can't go for 2 nights.
When you say we're not the same, Richard, what do you mean?
There are massive cultural differences.
Go on.
Some perspectives, our humour. I've just things I've seen myself over the last 20 years.
Right. So we have different senses of humour.
Well, can
you give me another example?
I'm trying to.
Yeah. I'll take one example. Just one. I think you're struggling to say something that you think, but you maybe don't say out loud very often.
No, nothing like that. No,
really?
I'm being blatantly honest. Yeah, I've got nothing to I dare. But no, I mean,
so say it then.
The white actor, playing this part. I mean, surely he must feel like,
Richard, we're staying here. Sorry, we're staying here for the moment. You need to tell me what you think is different between white people and black people.
Okay. No, I take it back. It's not. It's just certain aspects of the black community. Okay.
What aspects?
Okay, but you've got your black mates, who will fit into white communities, fine. But it seems certain the black communities in London and where they just live with black folks, it's like that their backs up against the wall all the time.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? They just harbour this constant resentment. There's this victimhood going on.
We're getting somewhere now, aren't we?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Why don't you just say that to begin with?
But because I'm trying to, because it's 5 a.m, I'm trying to gather my thoughts. That's why.
Sorry. It's not because you're ashamed.
No.
You're not ashamed to say that black people are resentful and characterised by victimhood. I said that there's two lots here. You've got the black people that are fine. That can integrate, mix. But now you've got this hardcore community, like I say, in London and bits in Manchester. No, we're black. They separate themselves. Sorry, so just to be absolutely clear, you think that black people? Well, first of all, you think that there are only two. You think
black people.
Yeah. Well, you said there are 2 kinds of black people.
Yeah.
Richard, which I think is probably slightly reductive, but nonetheless,
yeah,
when you talk about a black British person, what do you mean by integrating?
Well, I mean, I've seen the last 20 years a lot of black folks that they don't want to integrate.
What? It's their country. What do you mean? What do they need to? What do you mean integrate?
But they don't. They're not happy with white culture.
I'm lost for words. What are you talking about?
I'm not talking about my own experience. I see.
What's white culture? Other than in the sense these plays we're talking about, where the audiences are 93% white.
They call it white culture. Okay, the culture of the land.
Right. The land that they were born in.
Yeah.
And the culture that also belongs to them.
Yeah.
Right. Nice to talk, Richard. Sean is in Preston, in Lancashire. Sean, what would you like to say?
Yeah, morning, Oli.
Morning.
So, would you describe the UK government's attitude towards protesters authoritarian?
Yes.
You would? So how would you describe the situation in, say, Russia or Iran?
Authoritarian.
So it's the same. So basically we're on a par with Russia and Iran.
I wouldn't say it's the same. I would say they sit on a spectrum, and for a liberal democracy, the UK is tending closer to the authoritarian tendencies of societies that are either outright dictatorships or autocracies. Yeah.
I've read reports of Just Stop Oil protesters being offered a cup of tea and a sandwich by the police.
So?
You don't get that in Moscow, do you? Or Tehran.
Right. So, okay. So you actually think we should? do you have a problem with the protesters being offered a cup of tea and a sandwich?
It's not authoritarian behaviour, is it?
What, feeding prisoners?
Well, they're not prisoners, are they? They're protesters.
Well, if they've been imprisoned, then they are.
No.
prisoners.
You misunderstand. They're being offered a cup of tea.
Oh,
and a
sorry,
sandwich whilst
not arrested.
they're glued to the road.
Not arrested. Just being fed. Right.
Whilst they're glued to the road. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And the people that are getting multi-year prison sentences for doing things like slow walking down the road or strapping themselves to gantries and things like that. Those people that are getting jail sentences which are sometimes commensurate and similar to the jail sentences we dish out for assault and things like that. How does that make you feel?
I don't think anyone has been given a multi-year prison sentence for slow walking down the road.
I'm thinking one of the recent convictions, I think, is probably to do with the M25 gantry, I think is the one in the back of my mind.
Well, that's not slow walking down the road, is it? I mean, I was thinking of, was it the Dartford Tunnel where a couple of guys climbed up some mast?
They climbed the Dartford crossing, didn't they? The bridge.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
they got a couple of years for that.
That caused massive disruption and people missing BA flights and whatnot.
I think that was the intended
I think they got
purpose.
a couple of years, did they?
Yeah, I think they got a couple of years.
Right, so they'll be out in 12 months.
So it's okay.
That level of disruption where you literally, people can't go on holiday or on business or whatever, missing flights, and that's just one area of delay and disruption.
Yeah.
There would have been lots of other delays and disruptions to people on that day, not to mention the amount of policing involved. I think that if you break the law, then you should expect to face the consequences. And the same goes for the criminal damage to this painting in Cambridge.
No holidays on a burning planet, though, Sean, are there?
Well, what's that got to do with anything?
It's got to do with, the things that we hold dear, that we're inconvenienced by and we think are important, that they're kind of irrelevant if we don't address climate change. And so, yeah, it is deeply inconvenient to slow everyone up on a motorway.
And make them miss flights.
Yeah. But the point is there aren't any flights happening if we have ecological collapse, are there?
And look, if you believe in climate change and man-made climate change, and you want to protest it, you can protest it the same way the Palestinian protesters are protesting, by marching in London.
Well, unless it involves slow marching, in which case you'll be arrested.
Well, I very much doubt that. If the Palestinian protesters slow march next Saturday, I very much doubt if a single one of them would be arrested.
Sean, you said if you believe in man-made climate change. Am I to infer from that you don't?
No. I'm just saying that there's some people do and some people don't.
Right, okay. Got you. Can I? Yeah, I mean, I guess there's people who are right and there are people who are wrong, aren't there? Can we dial into your argument that Britain isn't an authoritarian state? When we look at something like the Police Court Sentencing and Court Act that criminalises protest that causes an annoyance, when we look at the Overseas Operations Act that places a statute of limitations on British troops abroad, allowing them, well, basically legal impunity to commit war crimes if they're more than 5 years old. And when you look at the Covert Human Intelligence Sources Act, which permits operatives of the British state to commit crimes, well, in the name of protecting the economic well-being of the country. How do you respond to those charges when I say that Britain's an authoritarian
Well, for a
state?
start, just picking up on one of those examples you gave, I don't believe that British forces can act with impunity. There's been
If it's
all
more than
kinds
5 years
of-
old, they can. That's what the legislation does.
Sorry?
If it's more than 5 years old, they can. That's what the legislation does.
So how come you've got guys being prosecuted for what happened in Northern Ireland 30, 40 years ago?
Who's been prosecuted for that, my friend?
British soldiers have.
Are you familiar with Soldier F?
Not specifically, no.
Are you familiar with Bloody Sunday?
Yes.
Who's gone to prison over that?
Look, at this moment, I don't have the facts to my fingertips, Ollie.
It's no one.
Okay, well, look, if there were crimes committed, they should be investigated. I wouldn't argue against that.
So you've got a problem. You'll have a problem. You'll have a problem with this legislation, then. You'll have a problem with this legislation, then, won't you? That means if a war crime's happened and it's more than 5 years old, that there can't be a prosecution.
I would have a problem with that, yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's not really got anything to do with protesting.
Is that because it's authoritarian?
It's not authoritarian, is it? What has that got to do with anything, Ollie? It's not authoritarian. It's neither authoritarian nor authoritarian to either have or not have a law about when a member of the armed forces can be prosecuted. What's that got to do with authoritarianism and protest? Why have you brought it up?
It's not authoritarian to permit operatives of the state to commit violence and do so with impunity. That you don't believe that's authoritarian. What do you think?
When was this law passed?
What do you think?
When was this law passed, Ollie?
2021. What do you think authoritarianism means?
I think it means the very heavy-handed state suppressing the population.
Like I just described.
What, with your armed forces example, you mean?
Yeah.
I don't see how the prosecution or otherwise of the armed forces has anything to do with authoritarianism on the streets of Britain.
Where's Northern Ireland?
It's in the UK.
It's in the UK, yeah, but it's part of this country, isn't it? Or it's all right because it's not in Britain, because it's on the island of Ireland. It's all right.
No. See, because you've lost the first part of the argument, Ollie, about Russia and Iran, you're now trying to twist me at 5:45 in the morning about legislation that's been passed about when armed forces members can be prosecuted or not, which is completely off-piste, if you don't mind me saying.
Sean, you're the one that called me at 5:45 in the morning. I didn't force you to call up.
Fair enough.
We're gonna run out of time, so I'll give you your last best case. I'll give you the final word on it because I'm a generous man. In fact, Sean, tell me why Britain isn't an authoritarian country.
Because the way protests are policed and the attitude of the UK government as it stands is perfectly fine. However, if you break the law, you should expect to face the consequences.
Well, I think that's the problem, isn't it, Sean? It's the fact that we've legislated to a point where protest is no longer legal. The music means we have to leave it there. What a highlight to finish on.